Look,
Okay, Rich.
Right, thank you. So it is 2 p.m. on Wednesday, the 11th of January, 2023. This is a regular board meeting of the Water Valley Board of Selectmen. I am Rick Reed, the chair. With me today is Margaret Turner, the vice chair, and shortly to join us will be Bob Freeze, select board member. So we have a quorum. Let me, under privilege of the floor, just bring up a comment that was given to me by a resident. As Eric Levy, who listened to our discussion of the insert at our last meeting and wanted to thank the select board for putting in the language that the Citizens Recycle Group had recommended. She was a bit dismayed that we still don't see eye to eye on the bringing recyclables to Hannaford, and she wanted me to remind everybody that she did talk to and did tell us that she did talk to the manager of the store, and they said it was fine. We would do so. I pointed out to her, I think that would still be an issue in any event, but more importantly now for her group, for her, I think, and for any of those who really believe in, are interested in recycling, they need to pay attention to one of the warrant articles coming up having to do with wind waste, and that's going to directly impinge upon their recycling concerns. So I asked her to take a look at that, and maybe she wants to, her group wants to get together, organize, and yes,
Yeah,
yes.
she also came in and talked to me about the same issues.
Okay,
As you know, she said that it's just a few people who take their materials to Hannaford.
mhm,
But I pointed out to her that the statement that gets put into the water sewer rate, it's only 1,300 customers. And so we can't, as a town, put it out there to go down to Hannaford. And she understood it,
right.
you know, that was.
That was the problem I was referring to, that we still have it if the town, if the store manager.
So I told her, you know, if there's 20 or 30 people that do it that you know of, you guys can talk about it. You can do whatever
The
you
store
want
allows,
to do,
yeah.
and whatever the store allows you. But we can't as a promote it. And she was satisfied. With
Okay.
that experience. So-
And didn't Steve say when we were discussing this on Monday also that what the store manager said is that they didn't have a problem with small,
Yes. with
small bags?
That's,
Okay,
so we're.
Yep.
I think she was satisfied with that, and we also discussed it in the warrant articles. And I have a meeting scheduled with her on Friday. at
Okay,
4
good.
o'clock, Go over what we talked about here.
okay, good, because I think that's where they ought to direct their efforts if they want to really make some money on the issue, so to speak, on the issue of
Yep.
recycling.
Yep.
Okay, I take it we have no one else with privilege of the floor. Shall we go to
We can
approval?
go to approval. of-
I'm gonna run down the schedule with everything except the public hearing and just go over everything except that. Approval of minutes from the 14th of December, and folks get a chance to look at it and everything. Good. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended? All, second? All in favor? Aye. Okay,
And that's which
that's
set.
right.
which-
The December 14th.
December 4th.
That's the only thing that's listed on here.
Yeah.
Not the, I think the later set, I think that Steve sent out for the 9th.
we can do that next week.
Yeah, we'll do
All right,
that.
that's
at
good
the
enough.
next meeting.
Yeah.
So calendar review is next. Our next meeting is on the 25th of January, it's only at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Planning board zoning amendment public hearing is tonight at 6 p.m.
Well, right here.
right here. Planning board regular meeting is January 12th at 8 a.m. And the community power public hearing is here at 6 p.m. also on the 12th, but I believe that has a Zoom component,
It
as
does.
well,
It's a.
unlike the others,
That's right.
for public attendance. Okay, let me skip over new business and go on to old business. I don't see Amy, so we'll just pass on.
Right.
6A.
Yep.
Why don't we go ahead and move to 6B, review and approve draft FY 2023 town budget.
Okay, so you have. We have the updated budget document. Which incorporates everything that we have been talking about. The department line items for the FY 22 spent are all current to 12/31. So those have all been updated since the last time you saw this document. We can go down through whatever line items that you remain to have questions on. Jim and I have been talking about specifically about the wind waste warrant article. We have some information here that we can go over. But
Part of this discussion.
right, as part of this discussion. And then other departments, if Dave has some information on a new grant opportunity that won't impact the taxes and, but it's an additional thing that has just come up. That's budget related. He can talk to you about that
Okay,
later. But the bottom line is we're now at $984,890 increase. That's a 30, almost 32% increase in the total estimated amount of taxes to be raised. It equates to about a $2 per thousand amount. Okay, so it's still very substantial, but there is no fund balance money yet in there. It is all of the capital accounts, large and small, are in there. The non-bonded warrant articles are all in there as cash, as taxes.
right.
So, if you look at page 17, I think it is, yeah, page 17, we have looked at our revenues for the year and our unexpended balance, and we're estimating right now unaudited, but we should be around $280,000 being returned to fund balance at the end of at 12/31/22. Right? So that gives us an available balance to work with of $886,000. Which is about $50,000 higher than it was last year. That is taking into account what we used the fund balance for the 22 budget. So you have the option to use as much of that as you want to alleviate any of that increase. Because what we would do is if you want to pick an amount or pick specific projects or line items in the budget and apply an amount of money towards that,
Mhm.
we will increase this non-tax revenue number,
Right.
which is going to lower the increase in the tax rate, taxes to be raised.
Mark, I just had a question, because I'm looking at the bottom of page 2, and the town operating budget is going up 15.58%.
The town operating budget does not include any of the special warrant articles. Okay, so starting at where it says new wastewater treatment plant and then down, none of that is included in those numbers. So that is strictly our departmental operations and debt service payments. So it stops right here, Margaret, at 4723. It's just these numbers.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the public understood that it isn't, kind of operating budget that is going 31%.
That's correct.
The town operating budget is going up approximately 15%, A great deal of that is related to labor,
Absolutely.
labor.
That'll be on
basically
the-
salaries and benefits.
That'll be on my.
Right.
Yep.
And so the way that you get to 31% is with all of the warrant articles.
And the capital items, yeah.
That involves
And,
capital.
and remember, last year, the starting point was $231,000 lower in those numbers, right? Because we included funding through the fund balance
Right.
for $231,000
Right.
in
The
expenses.
sheet that shows with the warrant item numbers that add up to take us from 15% to 33%.
Yes, well, they don't have numbers yet because the planning board hasn't voted, but it's this sheet that I shared with you, I think at the last meeting, Bob. But here, it's,
It's also page 2, no?
Page 2.
Yeah, page 2.
yeah, page 2, right here. It's everything from here there, so it's all,
Okay, but
that takes you from this number to this,
okay, so this includes all the warrant items?
all more. Yeah, except the only thing that's not in there is the stories of water without. Because we were still up in the air when,
Right.
about what we're gonna do with that. So that's the only thing that is not included. Every other warrant article is here. Yeah. And that's all of these warrant.
This might be a good time for me to raise, the race center, since it's part of the operating budget,
It is,
so we can make it part of the discussion. So I was struck, by a couple of things, a couple of days ago. First, Bob's comments about, not only spending an additional $12,000 on the race center, but should be really be looking at the $25,000 stipend. Given the value that the race center, brings to the town. Which is a subjective, assessment. And then I noticed too, at the post office yesterday, that there's a petition warrant, going around for signatures for raising $50,000, for the Ray Center. So as I thought about this, it first occurred to me, this is gonna get confusing to people. Because we're gonna have something, either 25 or 37,000 in our operating budget for Ray, presumably. And then they're gonna see this petition warrant article, and you're gonna wonder what's going on here.
And then on top of that, we got the capital reserve
10,000.
For the building,
for the
for the building, right. Which frankly, I mean, we'd have to maintain.
In the past was 20,000 last year. wasn't it?
But that was a 1 year increase to 20. It has been 10 historically.
Right.
So it
And-
went back down to 10.
And I think we would keep that no matter what
Well, we have to maintain the
happened to the
building.
to the Ray
Do
Center.
you
from a
remember,
temporary-
that was on the capital accounts that we, that you, voted on at the last meeting, to retain. Do you remember what that amount is? For the capital account, there is a capital reserve for the Ray Center.
Mhm.
That's on that sheet. Do you have?
It's
a copy
20
of
to
that sheet?
10.
I'm sorry.
Went 20,
No. I'm talking about what's already there. What-
Oh.
what
Oh,
we
the-
vote on
Yeah.
that sheet.
I don't have it
I
in
don't
front of
see
me.
that.
We haven't used much
We haven't used.
over the last
much.
couple of years. I think a couple of
We
years.
should have around 20 or 30,000.
I can check.
Yeah, we need to, just so we can know what that.
So I just, before I make my suggestion, and basically what I've said. There are a couple questions I have. Did I understand the budget numbers correctly? In that, the Ray Center would not be able to operate for a full year, 2023. Without the town stipend of 25 or 37.
Yes,
So, so this would, without that stipend, they would have to end their operation sometime
Well,
this year.
and even with it, they still lose $34,000.
well, but
Without
that's,
the-
if, without.
Without the preschool.
But he's asking without the preschool. Without the
where's it
preschool, they can operate the other programs,
right,
but they still need
to do
the
it,
town's subsidy to do that.
to do that, okay.
But if I can.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah, go ahead.
interrupt. So if you're taking out the preschool, then with our subsidy going from 25 to 37, they end up with a surplus of 34.
No,
See, that's the question I had, that's what I was trying to understand from the, that's what I was trying to understand from the budget numbers.
no, but you
But
gotta
that's what
take, you gotta
37
take out. You gotta take out the income and the expense of the,
That is taking that out.
That is taken out. Right here.
It's right there. And he's right, but that's with that's with a $37,000.
That's right.
So and that's also assuming that they get all of the other revenues that are there.
But if
For
you-
grants
If we gave
and
them nothing.
donations, if we gave them nothing.
Yeah,
Without the preschool, they end up with a $3,000.
right, that's what I, that's how I,
$3,000
that's how I understood.
surplus.
Right.
However, or a $3,000 deficit, right? Because it's 34,000.
Right.
So they would end up with a
based on a
if they
37.
if they got those donations
Right.
and the grants as they budget.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So there are a lot of moving parts. Moving parts of this, so I wonder if, given the circumstances that the Ray Center finds itself in at this time. It's at some kind of crossroads, I don't know what, but some kind of crossroads it appears to me, with or without a preschool. I wonder if we just take out completely from the operating budget. Either the 25 or 37, whatever we would agree to, and just have that one warrant that we would sponsor. That's look, the Ray Center, if you want the town to support it, we can support it at $25,000 level, or $37,000 level, or if you want to add a preschool, a $71,000. And then let just the town decide, an up and down vote of what we want to do with the Ray Center. To me, that seems cleanest. I don't know if it's tactically the best way to go for either the town or the Ray Center, but it's clean. It's an up or down vote.
I mean, the race center currently has the preschool. But that's not the only way to run a preschool. I mean,
Right.
so are we supporting the race center only because of the preschool? Or could the preschool go someplace else on the private hands or whatever? And we just support the race center as it used to be before the preschool.
Well, that could be how the warrant is structured. If we're talking about the 25,000 or the 37,000. As opposed to adding a preschool of 71,000. I mean, I think the purpose of the Ray Center's warrant is to get town buy-in on a preschool. As opposed to all the other programs. I'm just worried that whatever we do and that warrant on top of it, it's gonna get very complicated. For the voters.
What if you had back-to-back two warrant articles? The first one is the 25 or 37, whatever you,
raise it from
For the raise
25 to
it.
37.
as a.
Ask that question.
And a sack question.
Yeah.
And then ask the balance to get you to 71,000, but word that in support of preschool. And then you've separated the two, because
And
there's
it's clear.
other programs and it's clear.
That's
And then you don't have to go to the big warrant article and start trying to amend it to pull out some of the 25,000.
on town meeting,
On
at
that
town meeting, right?
And the preschool article, I think, has to be up to, not giving them $34,000. Because they're still in flux in terms of how many they're gonna have. They think 6 right now, it could be more,
Or not to exceed
not to exceed.
a certain amount.
Because I don't want to.
Well, that's
just-
always the case, Mark. I
Right.
mean, but for tax, unless you fund it with fund balance, you've got, we would have to raise those taxes. Whether we wrote them a check for $20,000 or for 71,000, Okay. You're never obligated to spend the entire amount, but
Okay.
we are obligated to raise the tax.
Right,
So that is,
okay. So,
That's-
so
Probably
the
one
way
after.
that you do that with the Ray Center is if the money gets approved to support the preschool, they understand it's to support up to this amount,
right,
right?
well, yeah, it's like that on any.
Okay, okay, I didn't understand
Yeah,
that.
It's specifically for
But the
preschool,
problem is it's going to be part of the tax.
Right,
if it's approved,
If
right,
it's approved,
right.
whatever that 30,000
$30,000.
difference, yeah, whatever.
$40,000.
And
Do you
the,
see, Bob, what we're saying?
Yeah. You know, if we're gonna go that route with the two warrant items. I mean, I'd leave the amount we give at 25,000, because it still have a surplus. Even at 25,000, you end up with a surplus. And then you have a real vote on how much the preschool costs, because it's whatever else they need to get up to support 6 grades.
Mhm.
Okay,
And on a warrant article, I mean, for those who don't think that we should even be given 25,000, they could pull that number out, they could make that number anything on the
And-
floor.
and yeah, they can amend it.
They can amend it to a lower number, a higher number, or they can just disapprove, or they can just reject it completely.
I mean, I hate to prolong this, but what's the complication with the school board running the preschool?
They,
Nobody's
because of the
budgeted
regular,
for it.
well, their budget does not include any money for it right now. It's a space issue and it's a regulatory issue. They have to run it as part of the school. And
So
so
you
they're,
couldn't run it.
it is a lot different. They can't just simply run it at the
Curious.
Curious George College. So they would have to meet all of the statutory education requirements. And I think it would be much more expensive to
I'm
do.
trying to, I'm trying to remember,
And-
Margaret, do you remember, what was the, when they looked at, you, secure funding for a preschool, like 2 or 3 years, it was 120,000,
It wasn't a lot, it was,
Yeah,
it was,
I think, so that's the kind of numbers they'd be,
they wanted to redo the room.
yeah, they had to
They
redo
had to
that room.
redo the art room.
And then-
which they now are using.
As a
Like,
class.
it's a classroom.
Yeah,
So the
So-
space is really,
so there were a lot of requirements, Bob, and the town. We had talked about it potentially being part of the rec, but even if it comes under the town, we have additional regulations that the nonprofit doesn't have to meet. Like, we would need to have the staff member who's a certified person. And our facility would have to, we
You have to have a special bathroom.
Yeah, you gotta make changes to the cottage. The nonprofit doesn't have to meet a lot of those requirements. So this, we looked at all 3 options and this was the least expensive.
for a preschool,
For a
for
preschool,
a preschool.
Yeah.
Other than someone coming in and opening up
opening
a
up a
private business,
private
a
business.
private business.
But this was the closest to the private business.
You ever look at the Mountain View facilities that they already have? I know they have. to-
Well, we
they have to-
talked
we have to
to the-
upgrade their staff.
We did, we talked to the resort about doing it and they were not, because they don't have the staff on in September or end of August when the preschool starts. So they don't bring their people.
I know where they could find staff.
Well, I do too. I'm just saying that they were not interested.
They were not
They got space. They got
I know.
And,
employees.
and a few years ago, they got rid of childcare service because they were having trouble getting staff.
Well, but their website does include something about a daycare.
Will they,
Right. That's part of the ski. season.
That's for.
Kids
guests to
camp.
come,
yeah.
Right, that's,
Right,
that's.
and they have to reserve
they-
ahead of time.
and it's really hard to get a spot there. It's
I
very hard. There's way more interest and more demand than
Because
what
you're
they,
catering to guests coming in for skiing rather than just
A
the,
resident.
a res-
here
a
for
resident. a
well,
resident.
they're all,
My main
Yeah.
concern here is that we have families who believe there's going to be a preschool, and I know it's a small number of families, but we have families who believe there's gonna be a preschool in the fall. And we have people who have moved into town based on the fact that there was going to be a preschool here. And I don't think it's fair, even with 6 months' notice, to all of a sudden say, we're not gonna do it. And so I think it needs to be something that is done for the year, and if we don't think we can do it beyond there, they have a 1.5 year notice to get themselves into something else.
Is there something else available?
There's a
There-
big waiting list at the new daycare that just opened in Plymouth. There's I think he said 70 or 80 people on the waiting list
The-
there.
And-
The one that,
There's a need.
the one that Penny, I'm sorry. I'm
What's it
blanking
called?
on it.
Moose?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but it
it's
was started.
mid-
it was
Antler, little antlers.
Little antlers.
Little antlers, but it was started by the people who run the medical.
Yes, yes,
Right,
yeah.
yeah,
And then there's also the old watermelon seeds, which was a very successful one in Camden, has actually been reopened under a different name. So that has happened since this whole thing started, where there was no care. That's why Waterville had to happen. So I don't know if that's gonna have an
Steve-
impact
Steve has checked at those places.
for space, and they're all
For
full.
space, and they're all
Yeah,
full.
which was the problem.
And that was one of the reasons why we continued to try to do it here was. And, you know, all of the financials are predicated on a census of 6 in the preschool. So if we can get our hands on those waiting lists, we could potentially get an additional 6 because the setup, the expenses don't appreciably change between 6 and 12.
Mhm.
So if you can fill that more, that's all additional revenue. And they may be able to,
We can pay the families to.
well, but that's partly
Yeah.
what we're doing, is that's basically what the town
Yeah,
is.
it just seemed, I mean, maybe it's something we gotta do, but it just seems funny to be set up a preschool by the town through a nonprofit that seems to be hanging on by its fingernails with no executive director, and that's how we fund this a preschool.
well, and again, the way that the preschool came about is that a group of concerned parents got together and said, we'd like to have a preschool in Waterville Valley. Who wants to run it? Raise your hand. And there was no private organization that was interested. And the Ray Center felt that they could make it to be at least a break even type of thing with a special concentration on outdoor activities for kids and nature and that type of thing. And they were the only ones. The school wasn't interested in doing it, certainly with all of the students that they have to take care of already. They no longer have the concern that they don't have enough students in the school. Okay, which is the reason they even thought about it. So the Ray Center was the only entity that raised their hand and said, yes, we'll do it. We have this core group of parents who are interested in making it work, we'll do it.
There's never been a town commitment.
Right.
It's not that the town is promised.
I mean, at the last meeting, the Ray Center came to, you suggested that they go out and do some fundraising, come back and see any evidence of that.
Right. No, and there hasn't been for quite some number of years.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, again, we can put this in front of the voters.
I'm recommending we leave 25,000 because the 25,000, the Ray Center has a surplus without the preschool.
Keep it in the operating budget.
Yeah, and then the, whatever is needed for the preschool, going to the second one.
And that we would sponsor the warning rather than,
Petition.
I'd
I'd rather the wording, we can make sure the wording is.
so the way we would.
is that true that at 5,000, they have a surplus?
According
It's
to
a
this,
small, it's a
it's a
small
small surplus, but yes, they do.
without the
They-
preschool.
It's,
$9,000.
it's about 9,000.
It doesn't give, well, it doesn't give any much for contingency.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
they're gonna have, it does count them as getting 25,000 of 27,000 of their own money.
Which net asset releases mean?
There's a fund, a pool of money that they can use, interest from.
Okay, so then just go down the path we were going on before this discussion, which was to keep the 25,000 in the operating budget. Well, you just need
Do one,
2 warrant articles.
Mhm.
25,000, which,
Well, if you have it in the operating budget,
are you
No,
wanting?
No, not for
left in
the
operating
25,
budget?
for the 12. For the.
oh, you're thinking of the, see that, okay, you're thinking of the 12, so they've got, bring it up to 37.
Mhm.
Boy, you're
I
gonna
wouldn't
get, it's
do
a lot of
No,
moving.
no, I would do it either, leave 25,000 in the, you can leave 25,000 in the operating budget and tell people there's no change from that. Or you can pull that 25,000 out and make it a separate warrant article. This is, regular operations of the race center for the 10 programs. Okay,
And get the town
and
buy-in
get
on
the
that.
town buy-in on continuing to do that. And then,
A
it
second
would
warrant.
be a second warrant article, which I think will be somewhere around, if these numbers hold, somewhere around an additional 25 to 30,000, right? Which is the 9,000 surplus and the negative 34,000 deficit, right? So another, say, $30,000 for specifically
Continuing to run the
continuing to
on-
run the police,
In 2023.
assisting them to run the police.
So that would not be the petition warrant that they're circulating now, 50.
That would be correct. That would go away. We would ask them to pull that down.
So we got the right amount then, we got.
Well, I gotta do the numbers
Okay.
and, but if we can break those 2 warrant articles down, I think it's the cleanest.
I do too.
Mhm.
And let,
Okay.
let the folks,
To let the town voters worry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do think in the discussion, where you talk about the fact that it has not, it's the same amount that's been in the budget since 2006, that it's worth mentioning again, as they did the other day, the history that when the race center took that over,
We were spending more.
we were
than the
spending
25.
quite a bit more than the 25,
Yes.
to run similar or identical.
And I'll go back in our records and I think we have a sheet on that.
Right,
The-
and
When
that they
we- where
have
we
not had an
determined-
increase in the support of operations since 2006.
And the town can address that by amending that
Yes,
warrant.
yes,
So.
Yeah.
What might happen, I think, is, let's say warrant item number 2 gets voted down.
Yeah.
So my question, I think I asked it, one other is, if the $25,000 plus the other income, enough to put the existing preschool through to the end of the year.
No.
No.
No, we would have to use some of that 25. We would have to use some of that 25 to get to the.
So maybe,
So-
so maybe it shouldn't, maybe it should be in the operating budget, the first 25.
or you can just bump it up to the 37 in the warrant article number 1 and give them the authority to,
Well, but we can use, once that money is authorized by town.
right,
If they get to 25, then I just think they can make it through this year.
their programs,
Yeah,
but it's.
no, including
The rest of the preschool.
Oh,
that'll get, that'll
I
get
think
through
we
that.
can, I will,
So if they voted down the first warrant item, then they wouldn't be able to make it for the rest of the year. So maybe we ought to leave the 25,000 in the operating budget.
No, that's a good point. Anyone can pull it out of the operating budget
Yeah,
too.
but that at least gives us assurance that they're gonna get through phase.
yes,
And then we'll have just one warrant item.
so then there's no race center after. If we do it.
Because they'll suck up all the money.
Well,
for
it
the
may,
preschool.
I mean, there's
A lot of the
potentially
money.
a lot of the money a lot of that $25,000 could potentially be used to get to the end of the school year,
Preschool.
or the
Preschool,
preschool.
right.
But we-
So we will be in effect,
I don't think it makes any difference which way you do. Leaving it in the operating budget makes it far more likely that the towns will do that.
yes, I would agree with that.
So just have a single warrant article, which is
But
For the
just
balance.
additional amount that's needed to make that.
to make the preschool run from the rest of this year and September to the end of the year.
Right.
You know, we still have the same potential issue for
Right.
24,
If they wanted
if they
to,
wanted.
run a preschool.
Right, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, that's cleaner. It's not the cleanest, but it's cleaner. Yeah. It's cleaner, we'll go with that. Well, since we're talking about these sorts of things under budget, shall we address stories? We've got to decide whether we want to include it in the.
Yeah.
In, as a warrant, article. You've already told us your opinion of it, but.
I mean,
I think you know what my opinion is, so.
you know, first thing that gets me is they get all these letters of support. They don't have a letter of support from WBAIA, which
That's right,
take care of the trail since the 1880s,
that's right,
every year since the 1880s. And they're not supporting it.
that's right.
I mean, maybe individuals are, but as a group, they're not.
They're not,
So,
many of them were here.
Right.
About that day, or
so, I
some,
mean, to me, that's one of the biggest things is
yes.
the trail organization in town doesn't support this project.
Bob, I said that at the very beginning of our discussions, that if we don't get AIA on board, this is gonna be a very difficult thing.
So, and my second issue is the $100,000 this year for 2 trails. You know, when he's talking about 50, or we got, how many trails we got now, we can pipe them all, 100
Not 30
trails.
some odd
There are
trails.
48 trails.
48.
125 miles,
I think you're talking $1 million project, so we're gonna start.
but not all of them are under WBAIA. A lot of them are Forest Service.
Well, most of them are Forest Service anyway.
But we would be working in conjunction with the Forest Service. We would be doing the same things out in the forest. I mean, under this project.
Some of the trails AIA maintains, some they don't,
Right. So,
in the forest, right?
I would just point out, because I've done a lot of thinking about this since we last discussed it. With little or no input except participation by some geocachers in the area. We could put together stories of Waterville Valley with no QR codes. You simply have to put a geocache at a place where you have a story to tell. They're not audible. Okay, when you geocache, you basically pull up the story on your phone and you read about it. Okay, and we have at least 50 around the area now. But we do not have to spend $100,000 to do that. You know, the town doesn't have to spend anything at all. It would just be a few of us working with the Historic Society, perhaps to get some started on the floor of the valley with some of the historic
I
spots.
mean, that book that was done is great.
It is
You
a
know,
great,
and that is a wonderful.
yeah,
So when I hike, well, if it's someplace I haven't been in a while, I've never been, I pull out the book, I read a couple pages about, you know, going to East Pond or wherever, and I don't bring the book with me, but
but I also think the idea of not taking your phone with you in this day and age on the trails. That's something that people need to start working
I
on.
think Brooke's right, I think, you know, we will move in that direction, everybody will, you know,
Mhm.
down the road, but
But it's
should
not.
we be spending 100,000 this year on this? I don't think so.
Yeah,
Well, from my, I don't think that characterizes it correctly, Bob. I think, first of all, we're looking at potentially spending 50,000. Right, and the rest of the money coming from grant. And I would say that it was gonna be very difficult to get volunteers to do, I think what you're suggesting, Margaret. We've approached the Historical Society and they're just not staffed to be involved in that type of project. They're still trying to get their act together. So we've tried to get volunteers involved, either business volunteers or organizational volunteers, or just residential volunteers, and people are just too busy. The idea behind this proposal was to basically hire someone who would take this and move it forward as a test platform for 1 year. Potential cost of the town of $50,000. And it allows us to make contacts with sorts of groups that could open up a cash flow for things like trail maintenance. Because it isn't gonna come from anywhere else.
I doubt you can get outside groups and then take the trail maintenance more.
Well, we've got, I mean, I think if you look at the sort of contacts that Marvin has made, I mean, who knows what they're really saying or thinking, but what they are writing is that, well, what's the town's buy-in? I think at one point Subaru was very close to coughing up. I forget how much it was, but we pulled back from it because we weren't ready. So, to me, it's a potential $50,000 investment, which is, I don't know, 11 cents on the thousand, to see if we can be out in front of something that's coming our way anyway.
Well, and I think we're already involved already, so I think the warrant article needs to be on there. It can go on there without any recommendation one
That
way
would
or
seem
the
to be
other.
I think that would
I
be,
think it's the fairest thing to do at this point in time, because
Yeah.
we've been wrong before about how people feel on this stuff. You know, we have 5 or 6 people who say we don't want to do this, but we don't know how the rest of the population feels.
And quite frankly, I would put the funding source as fund balance. That way you're not putting,
it on the tax rate.
you're not unnecessarily raising tax dollars if he doesn't come through with his share.
Right, up front, we don't have to rate, it's just.
That way,
we just don't take it out of
there
the
is no
balance.
upfront cost to the town. It's only if he gets his money.
I mean, I'm fine with putting it on the ballot. I mean, it's a little strange in my mind that this is something that the board has moved forward on, over the last few years, but we're not making a recommendation. But that's okay. I mean, at this point, I would just like to dispose of it one way or the other, is get it in front of the voters, and if the voters agree, use, the funding
Use
sources fund balance.
And they defeat it, then there's no tax.
There's no and even if they approve it, there's
And
not
if they-
necessarily any
Well, there's no 2023 tax.
tax impact on it, because it'll depend on money being raised by the others, and they may not come through as you surmise.
To tell you the truth, Rich, in response to your inquiry about, we've been involved in this and now we're not making a recommendation. I was not aware that people were gonna be so vehemently opposed coming out of the dark ages of hiking.
It was a bit,
As a person who has their GPS on every time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, again, there's another one of those, there's all complicated issues, there are a lot of moving
Yeah.
parts here, so. No, I'm fine with just letting the motion go, letting the warrant go forward,
mhm.
and then let the.
2-1,
All right,
Or 1 to 2.
1-2.
1 to 2.
No, do you want so 2 questions. Do you want a recommendation from the select on the warrant? article?
No.
Okay, so we got a no vote.
Yeah, it's a 2-1 no on a recommendation. On the
So
warrant.
no. What I'm
Right.
saying is, do you want to put selectmen recommend approval blank to blank?
Right,
Or do you want to leave that blank?
I think what Margaret's saying is you want to leave that blank.
Fine.
Okay, so are you okay leaving it blank?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna leave it blank.
I
Now,
mean, what look good if you had a 1 to 2 on it, right?
well, that tells the voters something if you put
I'm
1
fine,
or 2.
I'm fine with
So,
that as well.
But let's say that we
I'll hang my-
push that on.
Hang my neck up there.
And number 2, funding source. Do you want to do fund balance or do you want to make it taxes?
Sundown.
I think fund balance, because that makes it much simpler.
Even.
But if it is a school, we still don't have to worry about the impact on the tax rate for this year.
I just assume go back to the 2-1.
Or 1 to 2,
1 to 2.
recommend, so the Board of Selectmen do not recommend approval, 1 or 2 to 1.
Yeah.
Right. And fund balance.
Is that what you're saying, Margaret, or you're being agnostic? Because one is agnostic and one is not approval.
I think it needs to be on a warrant, but I think we should let the population decide. And not put our thumb on the scales as to whether we're for or against this at this point in time. We've obviously gotten it to this point and we're putting it on for your consideration. That's the way I look
I'm fine with that.
Then the town thinks you're ambivalent, so you're not voting
No.
it down or you're not voting it in, you're just.
Well, we'll have public discussion,
You know,
But each one of you are.
at. Us are taxpayers.
We can get out there and-
Express our opinions.
And we can discuss it further in a public hearing and discuss it further at the town meeting.
That's right.
So all of this will come out.
So fund balance as the funding awards and no comment.
We've done no comment.
Yes,
Bob,
I know.
Mark, we've done no.
that also true on the Ray Center thing we just talked about.
What do you want to do?
But what if we decide on a race center?
Well, the race center.
We're gonna keep the 25 in
Keep the 25.
the operating
Yeah.
budget and on,
On the other warrant article, which is to support preschool.
are we gonna take that over or are we just gonna let them do their petition?
I think we said we're gonna.
We're gonna
Take it
take,
over.
oh, no, yes,
Yeah.
we're writing the article. Do you want a recommendation on,
Let's do it the same way.
I concur. Okay.
okay, no
Do the
comment,
same way.
All right.
and funding source? We're gonna do taxes with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Would make more sense, I think. It's a, well, it could be just a 1 year hit. Well, the 25,000 is taxes too, right?
Yes, it is. So let's,
Do we want to have two different funding sources for,
no, I would rather have it, it's cleaner. with
yeah,
this
that's
one.
what
Okay. Great, so,
where else are we in the budget?
well, do you have any departmental changes or anything to talk about with public safety or water sewer, or let's wait on public works because we're gonna talk about solid waste, or on rec?
I had one on executive. You know, Steve and Sharon have done a good job catching us up on the minutes. Do we really need the $9,000 in there now to go hire somebody for minutes?
personally, I feel as though if the trend that we saw last year in 22 with the quantity of meetings that we're having continues to increase. Absolutely. If there's any indication that we can go back to 2 selectmen's meetings and 1 planning board meeting a month, I think we could be able to get by, but I feel as though with this project looming, we're gonna be meeting much more frequently
Well,
than,
we can also fund those costs out of the admin monies from the project. Because there's an allowance in the project for administration. So we could potentially fund it out of that.
But just those
And
discussions,
it's not just here.
or can we, those discussions are included in the.
Well, I mean, we'll have
Explain that.
special
Explain
meetings
that.
that are specifically for a treatment plant. Those could be paid for by the project.
I don't see how that would work. How would we pay labor out of the,
Absolutely, we could go out and hire a clerk for the project if we wanted to and pay for it out of administration. We're given, I forget what the percentage is, but there is an allowance for administration.
But for our regular meetings, we did not talk about the project.
Well, then it would be.
It would,
shared.
it would default to,
Default. We can just track which meetings are for the treatment plant and we can take it out of the project. I mean, we're talking about $1,000,
$1,000, yeah.
$2,000. We're not. We were talking the whole year was 9,000, so, you know, I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I never saw it as frankly, a lot of money to be concerned about.
Well, but we can pull it out of this.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we could drop the number.
Or you can drop it.
I think too, one of the challenging things is as the level of activity upstairs increases, population increases, they're busier up there, the minutes become more challenging to complete because there's really no quiet space for Sharon or the admins to do these minutes, so they're getting pulled away in the middle of them, which is pretty time extensive.
Is it possible just to drop the number?
Sure. Yeah, so that
What number would work for you, Bob, in terms of
3,000.
3,000? And then we
I'm fine with that. And then if there's additional time that, because and it's project related, we'll just put it under.
there's always contingency if it really gets busy during the year for whatever reason.
Well, it's going to be busy.
Yeah,
It's
no.
not a matter of. If,
It's true.
it's just a matter of
Okay,
how much.
so three, okay. Anything else on the budget, guys?
IT, network and internet services. Pretty good jumps.
Yeah, a lot of what you're seeing there, Bob, is associated with moving off of our physical server into a cloud environment. So we got a quote from our current IT provider to help us do that.
Okay, I remember that. Okay.
I think we're still playing at the margins here. These bottom line numbers aren't going to change.
Police ammo, we need to buy new ammo every year. We use up the old ammo.
Yeah, we have to qualify every year.
They use the ammo every year.
And use the ammo every year, yeah. What, like a fire ranger?
Yes. Train,
From the forest,
train.
The old incinerator.
making us jump.
Moving on from this discussion.
So what about, before we talk about win-wins, because that is gonna be a big topic here, but what about the capital projects and fund balance?
Using fund balance
Using fund balance,
rather than tax.
which is basically cutting into that $230,000 from last year.
Surplus, well, not surplus, but we.
It is surplus.
We returned it.
It's return,
Right.
it's fund balance.
And,
So we're up by 50,000 this year. That was said,
We're up, we added 50,000.
right, okay.
To the fund balance. Well, that's our estimation for the audit.
So if we use 50,000, then that would bring us back to even where we were last year.
At the start of last year, and then we used 230 of that.
Right.
number.
traditionally, or historically, for capital projects that we've not bonded, we've used fund balance for,
Well, we've selected some, we have varied on that sheet on page 17.
I mean, I'm thinking of
Yeah.
things like a cruiser or,
Well, yeah, we
Yeah.
have funded cruisers, we've funded all sorts of smaller capital, but based on, you can see, we've used anywhere from $9,000 one year to $335,000 another.
So if we were to take $100,000 out of fund balance to apply towards the 33% increase in the taxes,
Yeah,
how much?
well, we would just pick projects that equal 100,000.
I'm asking what 100,000, how much of a debt would that have? 100%.
It's 25 cents. I mean, you've got to use a couple $100,000, that's
on a projected 1560. At this,
well, right now it's 17. 1766 would be the projection.
Because you've already,
If the school doesn't change and if the county doesn't.
right. So what gets us down to the 15?
Half, well,
How
we
much
gotta,
fund balance?
we use almost all of that. You gotta get rid of the whole 900,000.
Yeah.
If you wanna keep it at 1566.
Right,
So you'd have to use all
right, yeah,
of it. We can't do
we're
that.
not gonna do that.
Well, you can do it.
We can, but we're not.
Please don't.
Your recommendation?
Well, I would recommend 200,000. Out of this list of capital that we go down and we change the funding source for 200,000.
Worth of capital.
And then we have 50,000. We have 50,000 on the stories project. Which if it happens, we use that additional 50,000. So that's 250, and that gets us, that puts us at the same spot on 12/31/23 that we are right now. And then we
So
would
it's a
have
net,
whatever.
Roughly is a net on the
Roughly
fund
a
balance.
zero.
So you just take the 200,000 when you apply it to some of these projects that you're looking at.
Yeah,
right here.
Right. And we can select which ones too, Bob. if we want.
Well, I
Or
mean,
they
if
just
you have
leave it up-
specific ones,
leave it up
then
to,
you tell me, I'll put it, but I'll just take those and.
That add
until it
up.
Equals $200,000.
I'm good with that.
Okay. That works.
Okay. So 200, so now the increase at the bottom is 784,890. Right, and we'll update this sheet.
Yeah.
Let you know that that-
Where we landed, we'll be.
But roughly, that's roughly a 50 cent impact to
Something. Anything else budget wise?
well, yes, we need to talk about.
Wind waste.
So you've got a sheet.
Good timing, Eric. Hello.
What happened later, so what happened was, we. I don't know, do you want to do the ordinances, because you're within 3 minutes that you should start the
I've got three.
public hearing at 3 o'clock.
This is gonna take more than.
That'll take
take
more than 3 minutes.
minutes. Is there anything else we have before we go into, let's see, town, well, I don't see Amy here yet, so,
Yours is not.
okay, so we have a non-public, any board concerns and directives, anything else, anyone else?
Do you have anything that we need to talk about? We're okay.
Okay, no correspondence, I take it, no phone calls coming in?
Yeah.
So, well, we're close enough to 3, so let me.
Do you have anything? What do you want out?
Well, not yet, not yet.
No, you don't have any ordinance
Fine.
issues.
Yeah.
Wanted-
I still have some time, but I don't have.
Right, but you don't have any
Okay.
ordinance issues, right?
Okay,
So there's nothing budget wise that you have any questions. You wanna work it out.
The other thing left is wind mix, right?
The only
Budget.
thing left on the budget is. Okay.
Okay,
Oh,
all right, well, we've drawn this out long enough to get
Us.
very close to 3 o'clock, and I see.
Yeah, but that's,
More people coming.
more
so-
people are coming into the public here, so. And you've got a couple of.
Oh, yeah.
changes.
Okay. So we'll do the public hearing on the ordinances and then go through the finish up the budget.
Okay, so Brooke, Dylan, you're
I
good.
thought you were leaving.
Or if you want to stay, because we are going to talk about the next ones. If you want to stay for a few minutes, but if you're good.
Okay, I'm gonna stay for a few
Any
minutes.
of speak over here, guys.
Seat over here,
Oh.
and we have more chairs that we can put out.
Okay, so we're going to move now to our public hearing because it's advertised at 3 o'clock, so I have a motion on the motion. I just open the public hearing. All in favor? Oh, aye.
Kids upset.
Okay, we are now in public hearing. With regard to
Make it
town ordinance changes, of which there are several. So Mark, did you have a plan, I can run through them, or just open it up,
I would, let's go right down the
I
list
think right down the list, and,
we have, and
okay, let me find that list, I have many lists from you recently,
no,
let's see. So that's the public, that's the public hearing for the planning board, I'm not that one.
So the first one is number 8, the noise ordinance.
Yes. Comments from the board on the noise ordinance?
Can I give you just a quick synopsis of the change? So the change is, the wording in section 2, which highlights the holidays that are included. It currently says, I believe, all federal holidays, and the wording will be changed, is proposed to be changed to enumerate those holidays to include New Year's Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day, instead of the term federal holidays. So
That would eliminate,
that would eliminate Veterans Day, which is always on the 11th,
Right.
and Juneteenth,
Juneteenth.
which is always on June 19th.
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day
Is on there.
is on the
Right.
list. It's on the
I
list.
think.
Yeah.
Columbus Day.
Columbus Day.
President's Day.
Junior
MLK and.
Day, there's 5 of them, I think it's been President's Day.
Yeah.
And President.
That's maybe the fifth. Thanks.
So that's the proposed change.
Okay, we've discussed it. Does anyone want to say at this point? So is anyone here who'd like to talk about this? Give advice to Jenny? Please.
Do I have to come up?
If you talk loudly, that'll be good enough.
Jenny Lucas, 22 Lost Pass Road. I live next to probably the biggest project going on right now in town. And I really oppose this proposed change. A lot of us have the holidays off from work. And they often coincide with a long weekend. We want to have family and friends in, and to have to put up with the noise of what's going on next door or down the hill, it's a little, we look forward to the days when we don't have the noise. And I know there's a whole group of people in town who probably think, oh, let them get their work done and get out of town. But I'm not one of them. I'm one who looks for that peace and quiet. Like the day after Christmas this year, which was the federal holiday, they're down there working. They're down there banging away, and me and my extended family are in my family room trying to enjoy a cup of coffee and breakfast, and it was just annoying. I don't think anyone's gonna notice if they finish up on November 15th as opposed to November 20th. Like, that's the argument to get them out of town earlier, if we give them those extra 5 days. But I think a lot of people will notice on those holidays when they're trying to enjoy a little peace and quiet with their friends and family, that they're not getting it. And just with regard to the project right next to me, all summer long, I mean, you think, oh, they're not here that long, they're here 7 to 3, 8 to 3. Those guys went 8 a.m. to 7
Yeah,
p.m.
they're allowed to.
All I know, they're allowed it,
Seven.
but they used it all. I mean,
Yeah.
there was no break. They weren't, cutting out of town at 3 p.m. like most construction workers do. So it's just, I know, you guys don't agree with me on a lot of stuff that I come before you for, but hopefully you'll listen to the abutters that this really affects when making a decision about this ordinance.
How many days we talking about?
Eliminating 5 days. And all we're talking about here is whether to advance it to
Right, I
town meeting
understand.
for a discussion and
I
vote. We're not approving the change.
And I understand it's a hassle, public safety gets called in, they have to go down there, it's more work for them, I totally get that, and I appreciate all the times that they've responded to my complaints the past couple of years. But I think it, comes to the territory, if you're gonna approve all these projects, then you're gonna have to expect to do a little bit more work to make sure. I'm kind of opposed to granting the contractors a little bit more leeway than the residents in town. And I know they can always come before you and ask for an exception. They've done that many times, and I don't know if you've ever denied them. So that's still in the wording. They can still do that. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else like to just,
So just for a point of clarification, as she raised here, Christmas Day occurred on the 25th. The federal observed holiday was Monday, the 26th. So would it be clearer in the language here to put the federally observed dates for New Year's, Christmas? Because they all become 3 days. If the date happens to fall on a weekend, it becomes a 3-day weekend. And what I hearing is we'd like to have no construction noise on that 3-day weekend, Monday.
How do we handle that now as far as?
We can, we'll make an, I mean, you
Right.
can amend.
Right. Right, but I'm asking what is the current policy now if a holiday falls on a
It says
weekend?
federal
Holiday,
holiday.
so
It
it's
does
the,
not say as observed
As
right
observed,
now,
that's what I
but we
thought.
always need to be
as
the observed,
the observed date.
right,
I
Dave?
think
That's
that's a good
been the
suggestion.
way
Yeah,
That the gentleman just.
we add
Rather than
language
on
in there
the
or
observed.
when observed.
and that's what I was wondering, because I don't remember saying anything about as.
Yeah,
observed,
yeah,
as observed the date.
that's how I want to do it. I know with the federal sort of holidays, it's for typically for, federal pay and time off, that kind of thing, and whatever you.
But that's generally the bank holiday, the
Yeah,
day you're right.
that's right.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to comment on? this? Yes,
I just think it's better than what the schedule was before, so I think I agree with this schedule here. And you're gonna talk about hours too in a minute, or is that all in the same time?
hours for,
Noise hours,
noise, I don't think we're making any
We have
Change-
not got any proposed changes
changes
to the hours.
to the hour.
yeah. One suggestion is because, I mean, the noise has been going on for a couple of years, obviously. If you had a couple of months where they could actually crank it out, maybe that might be like a better solution, like October, November, April, May. They'll schedule it, where you can go from 7 or 6:30 in the morning till, 6 at night. Because these guys don't want to come up here. They just don't want to come up here and that's causing the whole system to go slow.
So you're saying it'd be better if we gave them an earlier start?
I'm just suggesting, because let's say if you had a couple of months, 4 months, let's say November, November, December, or October, November, and then April, May, where they can just go hog wild, from 6:30 in the morning, because that's when they want to start. And they'll end up at 5 or 6 at night. You got better hours anyway in the sunlight. It might be a better solution than trying to, do it on a 12-month schedule. I mean, because this construction's going to stop at some point here. And then it's just going to be just your little normal stuff. I don't know, it's just hard to do the system you got now. That's all.
Chief, did you guys look at when, you were looking at the noise lines, did you look at hours at all? We just strictly focused in on the dates.
We didn't look at hours, it was always considered, I know there's been, a few requests over the last, few years for starting early.
Early starts more than anything else. Right?
And then that's always been your discretion of allowing those early starts. I do, as Craig said, I do get that feedback from many of the contractors, that they really would like to start early. Getting stuff done earlier in the morning, they're getting their deliveries much earlier. We're dealing with a lot of the noise complaints. Because of their outside contractors, they're not the ones, they're the delivery companies, they're the trash pickup people. They don't do business here, they're just servicing, these
A site.
particular projects.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're getting a lot of those types of complaints of starting early, and it's not the contractors, it's these outside folks who are delivering.
And it's unreasonable noise, right? It's not,
It is.
we don't define it other than in the ear of the listener.
Yep.
So Dave, how big a deal is eliminating these 5 days from your perspective?
From my perspective, in my opinion, I'm with the group that is, let's get them in and let's get them out of here. But then again, I don't live here, so. I'm just the perspective of, as a building inspector, it makes my life a lot easier if I don't have to face these guys. Because a lot of them are currently very confused of what's a holiday, what's not a holiday. when
Yeah,
can I
already
work,
playing
when I
this year.
can, I can't work.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're chasing them after the fact kind of thing. And I think Really boiling it down to these specific, being very specific days. Not only makes our job easier, but I think we'll get a lot more compliance. With the current folks who are doing these projects out there.
Mark, how's this gonna get on the warrant? Are people gonna have a chance to speak like Jenny and?
Yeah, it's a part of the deliberative session.
Yeah,
it's part of the-
what we're doing here is deciding whether or not we want to move it forward,
That's correct.
right? So we would need a motion to move it forward for public discussion.
Yes, after.
After, for each one of these, so.
Yeah.
And then there could be more discussion and debate
At town.
at time, but it will go to a vote at town meeting, if we decide to move it forward. No, we can show anything here.
Or you can modify, you can modify.
I think we can modify, I mean, I'm intrigued at the hours,
What gets
right,
forward the town.
we have until. Well, after the public hearing, because we'll get input from the public hearing as well, so we've got time to make changes to it as well.
Oh, so we don't have to decide right now?
No,
We just have to decide whether we want to move it forward at all.
Well, I'm also gonna make sure with town council whether or not town meeting can affect this. So I don't believe they can. Whatever gets forwarded for your language it's an up or down vote.
After
So
we
it's
finally
defeated.
fix the
After
language,
you
after our
finally-
public hearing,
That's correct.
in February.
Well,
Or
no,
today.
today is the public hearing. You can modify the language if you substantially change it. You have another public hearing.
Oh,
on the
that's
change
what I was
language.
trying to say.
I would say if you did what Craig recommended.
We have to have another,
You would have another public hearing on this one.
if we would have
If
decided.
you were to decide
Makes
to
sense.
add,
Okay.
or if you want the dates changed or days added. That's a substantial change. You should post what you're gonna
Gotcha.
put up.
But otherwise, if we advance it, then
If you
Jenny or anybody else can speak up at
Absolutely.
town meeting.
That's right, but
As
it will
is.
get advanced basically as it is right now. They can tweak it a little bit as long as they don't substantially change it, but.
Because a substantial change will require another. public
Another
hearing.
public.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
I wanted to just add, talking about like limiting the federal holidays to these 5 days makes it a lot easier to communicate. I just think it's not hard to communicate with a contractor when he gets his permit. These are the hours and these are the holidays, like, boom, there it is, or a placard on every site. It's pretty easy to do that. And I'm also wondering, if these guys where it matters, how many fines have been given out to these people who were repeat offenders? Any? I don't know. I bet, if there are there fines in the language, I didn't read further. Start hitting them where it hurts, and now I bet they stop showing up on holidays. That's just.
Any other further public comment? I'm seeing it. Board discussion?
Well, I think Jenny makes good points, but I guess I'd recommend we move the thing forward and let the voters hear complaints at the town meeting and let the public decide. Let the voters decide.
So advance it pretty much as is.
Yeah.
Margaret?
yeah, I'm fine. Advancing it as is with a proviso that it's the day observed.
Yes, we will add
Make
that
that-
language,
that-
or as, or as, do you wanna?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Craig, sure.
Well, at town meeting, it's either up or down, right?
Well,
That's
let's
what we
make
gotta
sure
check.
that we, yes. I'm
So
pretty sure.
if it's down, let's say, right, then it goes back to what we have today,
Correct.
Correct.
which is what Dave is
Federal
saying is
holidays.
confusing.
And
Well,
in
we're
which
going
case, but I
to-
think following Jenny's suggestion, and Dave's probably done this and they
Well,
lost the paper.
We all got caught on Veterans Day last fall.
Yeah,
Everybody had stuff going on.
yeah.
I had $2,000 worth of equipment out there by the hour. I would have easily paid the fine because it was cheaper for me to pay the fine than pull off $5,000 or $6,000 worth of work.
Mhm.
So we all got kind of caught on Veterans Day. That was the big one we ever, obviously, we're not bringing excavators in on Christmas or whatnot. But there was a couple of those midweek holidays that kind of mess us up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think if you define them specifically to 5 or 6, I don't think you'll have an issue. The big ones are Veterans Day and what's in June 13th.
Columbus, but now that they're working all year, yeah,
Well, it's not Columbus anymore, right? So
it is in my mind.
I know, but I think they got them.
Still
all.
like state law is still.
Yeah, but
Columbus.
anyway, there's,
They're deliberating right now.
those are the ones everybody got caught on last year.
Jason?
Okay. And is this, well, no, we're not.
You need an actual recorded vote or just?
No, you're,
You know,
we're,
you've got
we're
two
advancing
votes.
it. So the second one is, Selectmen's Ordinance number 15, wild animals. There's a definition in RSA 2071. But that definition does not include any waterfowl. So the proposed change would be to change the wording of section 1B to read, for purposes of this ordinance, wild animals shall include ducks, waterfowl, fur-bearing and game animals as defined by NHRA 207. So we're adding ducks.
And
water.
And David, will you just explain to everybody why we're considering ducks this way?
I think most people can understand with the duck issues and the issues at the beach, having to close the beach. Due to the high levels of the E. coli, which is a byproduct of the ducks that are hanging around because people are feeding them on the beach. And that's the regular source of food, so they don't leave, they stay. And during the hot summer months, when we don't have high flow rates in the pond, that E. coli number goes up in it, and it gets out. So this is a just as a way where we can enforce, certainly with education, you know, and some signage, but gives us the ability to be able to tell people that it's illegal to feed the ducks here.
Say that again.
That it'll be illegal, it'll be against the town ordinance to feed the ducks.
That's the purpose of this change.
Okay,
So our current wild animal ordinance was specifically for bears, to keep people from feeding the bears.
So ducks are the same.
so now it can't be the duck.
For different reasons, we're asking you not to feed the ducks.
Yes, Eric,
Are there plans to put up a sign or two?
we have talked about that. We haven't really engaged completely on how we would do that, where we would do that. This town squares private property. So we'd have to coordinate with them, I think. I think a lot of the duck feeding goes on.
In town.
Well, we
Town
do have,
square.
we do have a warrant, I mean, we do have budget plans to fix the sign at the beach,
Yeah.
which we can incorporate
Mhm.
additional.
Yep. But I
We gotta
think it's right that most of the feeding's happening in town square.
Yeah, and most of it is happening in town square, but we can.
We just haven't
We have
closed
ways-
on
we
it.
haven't closed on it because when town meeting approves it, we'll come up with a plan how to.
Can this read?
Yes,
Stay away.
Presidential, I know that in Meredith, they have a duck problem. They have signs, so you might want to look at theirs.
okay, thank you.
They always make me laugh.
Is there anything like strategic that could be done to keep the ducks from being hungry enough to head down there to eat? Like
Keep them fed.
encourage feeding up here or?
Oh. No, yeah, I see.
There could be an
Just
attraction.
like a version of the beaver problem. I don't want to go there. There are ways to deal with ducks that we don't want to talk about. Just don't feed the ducks and see what happens. But it may not work, you're right. When folks visiting us there with a little kid, and little Mary wants to feed the duck. But it doesn't matter what the sign says, little Mary's gonna feed the duck.
It's a hot topic in Parks and Recreation, definitely among the circles, because it's really difficult to address. Once they know it, it's really hard to get them away.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
Duck patrol, chief, I don't know.
We're not there yet.
Come up and throw all my leftover bread over the fence up here. and like-
Yeah, no, no.
He's up there.
Yeah, really. So, any further board discussion on this? Are we fine with moving this forward? Okay, I think that's an easy 3-0.
After that, but before we do the next one, we have signs out there for the ice. I've seen people walking across the ice.
Yeah.
Thought last night. We do have thin ice signs out there. We do. Yeah, there is posted, but they
We
only,
need another.
they only do so much.
I've seen people right out in the middle of the.
Walk from the beach over to town, so they're going over the bridge.
Darn, I'm a war time. Okay, what's the next?
The next one is, ordinance number 16, alternative and modified heating systems ordinance, sections 1 and 5. And there's numerous wording changes. Do you want to summarize those?
Yeah, so this is more of a housekeeping issue, so. We know, just wanted to point. The law to the state fire code. And it wasn't under the old VOCA code, we now use, the state recognizes the International Building Code, the Residential Code, the Mechanical Code. The codes for NFPA, for basically the national fire codes of what the state follows. And that's what I use when I'm inspecting. Those are the standards that I'm using to inspect these things. What it's also doing is, as the authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ, I'm the AHJ, when it comes to putting this in, we have always, even with, when Chris was here, if anyone puts in a new stove, whether it's propane, fire, appliance, we have always, if they're in a multi-unit dwelling, we've always required them to put fire blocking in place between the levels. Okay, so there's a fire stop wherever their appliance is. So the idea for that is if there is a fire that breaks out at that appliance, that it gives it a chance to slow it down before it reaches into other people's other units in there. What this does is it actually puts it on paper. That was our rule. Most of the property managers and contractors, like Energy Savers, those kinds of folks that typically do the installs, knew that was our standard. But all that does is actually put it on paper. And so we had, I had one contractor that came in and said, well, I would have quoted the job differently had I known. Well, you didn't ask, but this gives an opportunity to say, here it is on paper. And that's it for this one. Just updates the code reference and adds our requirements of
Updating and starting with current state law.
Yep.
Any discussion, any public discussion? Any board discussion? Shall we move this forward?
Yeah.
I think that's another 3.
The next one is, ordinance number 17, building permits, sections 1 and 5. There are really big changes here because we're changing the permit form itself, and things like that. So you want to summarize what those changes are?
So this permit, what we're doing is, when this was originally passed back in 1994, we had $1,000 threshold for building permits. With the change of everything, I think it was time we looked at the average price of projects in town, and over the last 3 years, it's been right around $30,000 for most of the renovation, excluding new construction. So just a renovation, about $30,000. So if we look at a third of that, brings us right around to $10,000, and we decided that moving it up from $1,000 to a $10,000 threshold would be more representative today taking the price of materials, cost of labor, that sort of thing.
10,000 dates from 1994, is it?
1994.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it upgrades it to $10,000, and, defines, that it says repair modification and includes licensed work. So before it was, so if it's $10,000 project, or if you're changing your plumbing, gas, electrical, only because if you do electrical, plumbing, gas, any licensed work, it prompts inspections. Okay, so we can't do inspections if we don't know that the project exists. So therefore, we require you to have a building permit. So that way,
Irrespective of the cost
that's right, irrespective of the cost.
of these sorts of licenses.
These sorts of things are licensed, requires the building department to inspect them, therefore you need a permit. What this also does is it creates maintenance projects not requiring a permit. So we define that as any reconstruction, repair, renovation where projects are replacing a portion of the structure or component with in-kind materials. So there's some examples here. If you're replacing asphalt shingles with asphalt shingles, you don't need a permit. If you're replacing windows and doors, you don't need a permit. You consider that maintenance, okay? If you're paving your driveway because it would have already been paved and it needs repair, you don't need a permit, okay? This doesn't include licensed work, additions, modifications, or upgrades. So if you're upgrading any of these things, so if you have a dirt driveway and want a paved driveway, you need a permit. But if you already have a paved driveway and you want to repave your driveway because you don't need a permit. And so everybody kind of understands what that maintenance portion is. For us, it will help us not get inundated with $1,000 threshold. We were getting a lot of building permits in for maintenance type projects and stuff that are, we don't need to inspect. If you replace your roof with asphalt shingles and it's asphalt shingles, there's nothing that the building department really needs to look at. So we found it unnecessary for those types of projects to go through the permitting process. And then what we've added was the required inspections for the project. So it's adding a provision in here where if you don't, either you don't get an inspection or you don't, we do an inspection, you find deficiencies and you don't fix them. What this does is gives us the ability through the ordinance and not state law to take action, okay? So I would much rather, it's much easier process for us to enforce our own town ordinance than it is through state law. So all that other provision where it says the applicant the applicant is responsible for all the required inspections. So I'm not chasing people for inspections. They know what inspections they need. When they're ready, they need to call us. That's basically what it is.
Any public? Yeah, Eric.
Simple question. Is there a reason the $10,000 minimum is not on here? It's not on my sheet.
Paragraph 3.
Perhaps you had an older one,
Yeah.
Eric?
There's nothing here.
It's just an asterisk.
Yeah, there's no amount.
Oh, that was one of, that sounds like it was one of earlier.
I think that was that was
Earlier.
a previous draft.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yes, let's hear from our business
Commercial,
representative.
residential, does it matter?
No, doesn't matter. They all follow the same. It's whatever the code is appropriate for the occupancy.
What's your overall view, Craig, on this?
That's fine.
Sean?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys do a lot of
This is.
maintenance and renovating and addition improving.
Yeah, makes sense.
Some towns do make commercial do 100% permits, you know, some don't. It's fine with me.
It doesn't need to code and watch my paint dry.
No, I do not.
Any other comments? And sorry about that. We can get you.
I do have one other observation.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Just a little technical thing is the effective revision effective date at the bottom would probably change.
Yes, it will.
It would.
Assuming it's,
Assuming it passes.
assuming.
We just wait to see what day that is.
Yeah.
And this also, the permit is, the actual permit forms are all being updated to reflect that. We have been working
Right.
with Tara to make sure that we're meeting all of the
Something, yeah.
ordinance. Yeah. So, yeah, there's other changes, but they're not a town meeting vote change.
Any further board discussion on that? So shall we vote 3-0 and move this forward?
And the final one is selecting ordinance number 20, municipal solid waste ordinance. We will include a new section 3 that states no person shall deposit municipal solid waste at the town's transfer station between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Required by our administrative order. And with state statute. Mandates. Transfer stations can only be operated from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Any discussion? Yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, so we can't use these dumpsters?
You can't use these dumpsters from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
A lot of like, I bring everything in here around 9 o'clock at the end of the day. And it worked out perfectly for me.
Well, it is, but it's against state law.
State
And,
calls on it.
and when we are up in the new transfer station, you won't be able to do that.
Could be a gate.
There'll be a gate and it will be locked.
And I can't
There'll
get a
be a
key.
gate and a
I get a
fence.
key.
No, you're not.
So, I mean,
Trust me, I won't take anything else, all right?
You're not getting the-
It's just that we don't have a dumpster. We prefer not, I prefer not to have a dumpster. Dumpsters just cause all kinds of issues and they look unsightly and problems and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, well, unfortunately, we can't, it is against state.
And if I
law.
do have a dumpster, it's literally gonna have to go up against somebody's backyard.
Well, then you need to come into the select board for a site plan review for location of a dumpster, if you're gonna need a dumpster. Yeah,
Well,
I
if you're
mean,
not taking the
that's-
trash,
We don't want, this is not something we want to do, this is a requirement.
we were inspected
We
this
were
summer.
inspected and we are under an administrative
Creative order
order
of
to
consent to do this.
fix this, and if we don't fix it, then the town's gonna be fined.
how much?
A lot, day after day, every day we do it, so it is not.
There's a lot of people who use this after 6 p.m.
I understand that.
You have no choice.
We have no choice. This is.
We've been
not
scofflaws for what, 20
We-
years?
We are operating,
Are there gonna be any public dumpsters that we can use?
no. It's illegal.
No, I mean,
Unless, wait, so the law is where the waste is generated.
Yeah.
That property can have a dumpster. That's why all of the condo associations have dumpsters. Because the waste is being generated on that property.
I know how it works. I'm just,
Well, that's why we are doing this. So anywhere that we have dumpsters together, like down here, they're supposed to be in a fenced area and they're supposed to be gated, and you can't dump between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's what the state law says.
we were told we had 30 days to make this a gated controlled area. And we were able to negotiate what we've got
Right. So. yeah.
until next December or in fall when we go into our.
That was supposed to, our inspection was in August, September timeframe. We were initially told. 30 days.
We had 30 days to put a gate, put a person,
Put a fence around it.
all of that.
And if we violate it, that's what's gonna happen.
That potentially, that's one of the things they can come down on us with. Right now, we have that,
We have
Put
a
off
grace
until-
period. We have a grace period until the end of next year.
yes,
And until we have the fenced and gated and manned facility, what kind of sign will you be putting up?
There is a sign.
How-
It's already,
One, One
No,
second.
there's one sign on it.
I haven't seen it.
I think there's three.
There are
Four?
there is.
Okay.
Do you know what it says off the top of your head?
It says do not dump here between,
6
or
p.m.
dump here only between 6 AM and 6
Residents
PM.
only.
Residents,
Only. and-
Upon penalty of death, what?
they edited that out. I had that. Sir, we do monitor that with video. We have video cameras on the transfer station and we monitor it.
Okay,
And staff is watching it between 6 PM and 6 AM when they're here. And we will correct it if we have dumping illegal.
and the fine is,
Tomorrow night.
and what is the fine, no?
The
Hang on.
fine that's in there, I can't remember. There is
$500
fine.
per offense.
I'm sorry,
Oh, 500?
500 per offense.
Well, that's for the violator.
For the violator.
You're talking about the violator, not the
Not the
town.
town.
If
Not the
we're-
town.
if
The
we don't-
town
we don't
doesn't
enforce it.
Yes,
right.
yes. Imagine that.
So if I can apply for my own landfill, when
And you can go ahead and go
Oh.
to DES, we would love that. Go ahead. We would love it.
I might get it going early so they can see what it would look like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, don't.
no,
No,
please don't.
we don't.
Any other further discussion?
Yeah,
Sean?
I know this is not within your control, but this is a fairly significant inconvenience for businesses on their 24-hour operations. And then sometimes the dumpster gets full. I never know when I'm gonna have to find someplace else, like a bag full of diapers or something else. So this is not great for businesses.
Yeah, or for single family homeowners.
Yeah, you get out of work at 5 o'clock, you got 10 minutes to get trashed. It's not.
You have a lobster dinner at home and you gotta wait
Oh, yeah.
the next day to throw it away the shelf.
Well, there's a lot more to this, which
Right.
is part of our budget discussions that we'll have after this ordinance public hearing. But there's more to that because not only can you not dump between 6 PM and 6 AM, whenever that gate is unlocked, that transfer station has to be manned
Mhm.
by licensed personnel. And right now, we're not gonna be open from 6 AM to 6 PM, 7 days a week. We're not.
This is the new
We-
facility
In the new facility.
later this year,
We are going to be open only a limited amount of time.
as does other towns.
So this is gonna get
Absolutely.
significantly worse.
Strict- Yeah,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yes,
What about municipal trash pickup?
the dumpsters are still.
I'm
gonna
talking
be-
about household
The
Curbside.
household.
curbside,
We did discuss it, but
not enough.
Well, no, but you're talking a
cost.
completely different way of.
You're talking a different way of doing it,
Well, yes, absolutely.
or the
but
state
you're
is talking a
talking-
different.
That's right. We're completely changing the way we do trash, absolutely.
What would be what's wrong with doing curbside?
That's-
Whole story.
Because you're just shifting the problem to the businesses, because people are gonna use, I mean, one of the things I don't have is a dumpster, because I hated dumpsters. I had a ton of commercial buildings. We must have had 60 dumpsters out there. Every single Monday, they were loaded with furniture and all kinds of
yeah,
stuff.
no, we.
It was just, we were just, because
That's part of what
the
we're gonna talk.
town
Yeah.
never took anything. They were never open. And people
Exactly.
just drove around to any business they could find an open dumpster. And if they didn't find it open, they put it right in front.
Mhm.
And all you did is, all this you're doing, or state's doing, is shifting the problem from right here to everywhere.
We made those-
preaching to the
we
choir.
made those arguments.
What's Vermont? We can go to Vermont?
Yeah.
We argued with the state about.
We went
this.
pretty high on this
We
too.
went to the assistant commissioner of DES with these issues, and those are exactly the arguments that we made.
All right.
And we were told, this is non-negotiable, these are the rules.
You got a year to fix it.
And we have now until the beginning of December to get it completely.
Of this year.
fixed. Of this year.
We're apparently the only town in the state
New Hampshire, yes.
We are.
that has.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
gate
my
around.
town, my town,
No, it's a good pause. It's a great thing.
Except it's illegal.
There's a lot of illegal things on this.
Yeah, but we were called on this one, Craig. We got found out.
You gotta go by with good run.
I think the gate should be at the end of the driveway.
So I'm just saying.
Okay. Any
Center it, here we go.
Discussion. Board or, okay, so I'm advance it 3-0.
All right, so that is all your.
Okay, so, yes, do I have a motion to close the public hearing on the ordinance? All in favor? Aye. Okay, public hearing is closed. We will now revert back to our regular board meeting. I see, Eric, are you here for the wind waste?
I'm all ears.
Okay, because we have a couple items to do.
See, you have any,
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
here for anything? Nothing special. Okay.
Okay. So in terms of, we want to finish our budget discussion with wind waste, and then engage Amy and that discussion.
Sure.
So let's finish off budget, so we get that off our plate. And would you like to take a 2-minute break? All right, yeah, that's just, all right, just a couple minutes break.
Steve. What's the deal with the dumpster? We have to order one from the town.
She did the-
Yes, yeah. He said he could go to the site. I'm not doing that. They're green.
That they are.
Metal.
Like, yes,
We'll put them right on the road.
In the corner.
Yeah. I said, yeah.
Nope, looks like Craig got a dumpster.
There you go.
We'll get back. Right. But you're in, you're never leaving.
It's not gonna be a problem until we move it.
About a year from now?
No, this winter.
Huh?
This winter.
Jim, what's the deal with the dumpster? We have to order one from you
Right.
or what?
Dumpster?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to, locate one, put in an enclosure.
I'm gonna put it right on the road. Easy for you
Well,
to
if you
just pick
get-
up.
Makes it easier for us,
So long.
but, yeah, we get,
Did you go to France?
the enclosures,
But the.
obviously,
Oh,
the big thing,
somebody that,
Is there a definition?
Been
of
around?
Closure?
yes.
are you feeling it?
If you're interested, I can drop off a copy. of the,
Yeah, whenever.
Everybody.
Definitely.
I think it's 24 hours.
You only got one size.
A few weeks ago, but.
You only got one size of dumpster, right?
No,
You got small.
get
ones.
10, 8, 6s,
Yeah. And how often do you pick up?
as often as it's needed. There are those dumpsters in town that we know have to be hit once a week, some can go twice a week, some need daily almost.
Somebody told me to manage with there, and they're like, yeah, look at my cycles, yeah, but I'm used to seeing just. You know what I mean? I apologize. I record license and all that stuff.
I was gonna ask, so there were a lot of.
They were asking you, huh? You wanna get on that? You wanna wait forever.
I'm the one that
Yeah.
spoke to.
We
the-
talk about whatever you wanna do.
Spoke to the manager.
And anything, bring it
They
as much
called,
as you want.
what they didn't say that. That is second manager called the upper manager.
Yeah.
Said, of course, you make this, if you are a customer, these,
I
these are things, and this is the quote. That's what they.
But did you talk quantities?
They took to,
Did you talk quantities? Did you say, can I bring a whole?
no, you don't do that.
No, okay.
She did, and that's why she got yelled at. She got yelled at.
Yeah.
Tell me what you did. I'm sorry. That's okay. And the thing is, you know, they're not perfect. They don't do everything. That's the problem. They don't do grass and
Really
they're.
not great.
But you break people twice a week. like I do. Do grossness. They have
Yeah.
a little bag. And
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's a shop.
so I told.
We'll talk later.
Yeah.
Wow, there is a shop. It's right there. It's-
Okay, I'd like to restart the regular board meeting of the select board. So if I could start and move on to our next agenda item, which is, Mark, there was one other budget item that you wanted to get.
So on the sheet here, Jim and I sat down to verify the numbers that we had in the budget. We were able, Jim was able to get a copy of a draft copy of what the contract would look like with Winway. There are a lot of restrictions that are within that contract.
I just look over there.
So there are a lot of issues that we have to address. We did analyze the amount of money that we initially proposed in the budget for the actual transportation of the materials to Wind Waste.
Does everybody know what wind waste is?
Oh, okay, so Wind Waste is the facility in Canterbury, outside of Concord. That is the waste to energy facility. It's a massive incinerator system, which we're looking at as an option to taking our waste up to the Bethlehem landfill. Okay, so the way that we initially looked at this was to put in the base cost for going to Bethlehem for a year, and then having a separate warrant article, which would be for some amount of money, which would allow us to transition instead of Bethlehem to go down the Windows. So that is what we are talking about now.
And they create energy from.
They create energy.
Wow.
So it really is a type of recycling for our materials. So that's one of the ways we wanted to address, at least initially for the next several years, recycling, right? So we received a cost quote from Wind Waste with this draft contract. Jim and I have looked at it. We initially proposed budget numbers to the selectmen for the base cost to Bethlehem and for the additional cost to go down to Wind Waste. We were just checking our numbers because the selectmen are getting ready to finish the draft budget for the budget hearing. And we were looking especially at the separate warrant article for the cost for Wind Waste. When we went through the contract, we identified that there are not only costs, there are logistical issues that, because you have to be a lot more careful when you are taking material down to Wind Waste than you do just taking the material up to Bethlehem. So there are materials that we currently collect with the trash truck, and we take it to Bethlehem and dump it in the landfill, but it can't go to Wind Waste. That is going to create some additional issues here, which will raise costs and things like that to what we initially had proposed. And then, sorry that this is the first time we've done that detailed contract.
So we knew it was gonna be, we'd have to still stay with Bethlehem for some of these, right?
Well, right, and we will have to, even if we go to Wind Waste with the trash truck, we will still be taking construction debris and bulky items and things like that to the landfill. We won't be transporting it there. It'll be a contracted transport. But we still will be taking material from Waterville Valley to the Bethlehem landfill because they don't take it at Wind Waste. So, and that is a major concern that we have in looking at the contract. We will have to be much more careful about stuff that we are tipping into the trash truck. So as an example, we come in on a Monday and we tip at a condo association into the trash truck and there's a bunch, or we get ready to, and there's a bunch of construction debris in there, we're going to have to drive away. We can't tip that. Is that right, Jim?
Well, yes, that's correct. Now. You, if somebody remodeled, and this happens all the time, just to preface it. Every town has control over what comes in to their, they have control over the waste stream. They have control over the transfer facility. They inspect, they make sure people are putting things where they need to go. We will only have that control for about 10 or 12 dumpsters. The other 55 that are out in town, we will have no control whatsoever of those.
Which we
So
don't now.
we don't now. However, there is going to be, it's going to be, logistically, it's going to be a whole lot harder for us. Because if somebody, and this happens all the time, there's bathrooms in a dumpster. There's carpet in the dumpsters. There's all kinds of material that can't be dumped down at Wind Waste that would have to now go to C&D. And would have to, we would have to arrange, somebody's gonna have to clean that out in order to dump the dumpster.
Presumably, we contact the property manager and have them remove it, or have to
Or
pay
the
the.
association
Right,
Yeah.
is going to have to, and we will have no contract with Bethlehem. So we can't, we're not gonna be able to dispose of it as a town.
Well, right, they would, so however the dumpster gets cleaned out so that it could be picked up.
Mhm.
All right, whatever, whoever cleans that out is gonna have to dispose of it at the transfer station. Okay, it'll go as quote unquote C&D, bulky items,
Right, which
You don't
is where it
know.
should go.
Mattresses, box springs, all the time. It's just crazy.
It's
And
going,
right now, we screen for electronics. You know, that type of thing, and air conditioners that can't go to the landfill, that have to be disposed of another way. We screen for that, and it's not too awfully bad. But construction debris daily, mattresses daily, you know, all this other type of stuff that's gonna have to come out of 55 dumpsters. So,
and that's something that until we looked at the wording in the contract, it wasn't, you know, to see what was not allowed to be dumped at Wind Waste. This is a
Right,
lot more.
and
than we
there's also,
thought it would
yeah,
be.
there's also size restrictions, nothing longer than 6 feet. You know, and there's a, there's a lot of things that are allowed to be dumped at the landfill as we go now. So I'm just pointing out the logistics to you, because we don't have control over 55 dumpsters.
When you come across material in dumpsters that ought not to be there anyway, you don't tip the dumpster.
Right, if there's
Correct.
a visible TV or.
Right.
Right.
And you call the property man and you keep a list, and we've talked about this before,
Mhm.
and then they have to rectify the situation
Correct.
before the truck comes back, or they could miss a cycle.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's what's happening.
So does that happen often?
Yes. If it isn't a vehicle,
We're generous when we go back.
right.
Yeah.
And you know, because if there is a bathroom, you know, with the sink and the vanity and a mirror and the aisle from the floor and, you know, and all that kind of stuff, we can crush that up and into the truck. Now, we won't be able to do that. If there is big hunks of carpet in there, we won't be able to dump it. If there are mattresses, now mattresses, we would have to, right now, what we do is we collect mattresses on a weekly basis. And we put them in at the end of the load, just before the truck is gonna go to the landfill. And that way they'll, if you put them in at the beginning of the load or in the middle of the load, they won't come out of the truck. So you put them in at the end of the load and we can get rid of them that way. So we'll have to have some dry storage for the bulky items, the sofas, the chairs, the headboards, the box springs, all that kind of stuff. We'll have
Which
to
they
have
should
dry
be- which they
storage
should
for.
be Bringing, not be putting in the dumpsters.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. But we'll have to have dry storage for that type of stuff because we typically, and I think it's in my notes. We typically do not put that in the C and D can because one, it doesn't compact. And two, if mattresses and all that stuff gets wet. Then it adds to our tonnage costs.
Right.
So, yeah,
And where do we? I know that people dispose of these in inappropriate places, but where is the appropriate place to dispose of a mattress, couch? Sofa?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the transfer station.
Okay, and are those in a dry space then up there?
No, because like I say, we take them on a weekly basis and put them in the back of we can take, that truck can pack a couple of couches in at the end of a load.
And then where they go to the
They go
landfill?
to.
Yeah.
Which they would be doing from the C and D can, it goes to the same place.
Goes to the same
It's
place.
just how it gets transported at this point. But Jim's comment about the dry storage is now, instead of being taken at the end of the week, we might have 2 weeks or more where it's gonna sit, and we
Before
don't
it's
want it to
contracted.
be outside before it gets put in the C and D. So
Now you have a contractor picking. it up.
now a contract,
Which would be Casella.
and it's gonna be Casella, for, they're the cheapest transportation option right now, but their transportation is based on tonnage, what we're gonna get charged. So we wanna keep that to a minimum.
That and plus the other thing that we get charged every time. We'll be charged pretty much the same way. So in order to get get rid of bulky waste, we do the same way as a C and D. However, you're getting charged, I think C and D right now is $5.75 per pull for
Yeah,
each
right.
roll off.
The bottom, the bottom, bullet,
Yeah,
$71.97 a ton plus $575.
yeah, it's basically $1,000 every time we send a C and D can out. And we try very, very hard to get 5 to 6 tons compacted into that C and D can. And last year we did 118 tons of C and D.
Greg, you had a comment?
Well, I'm used to, down in Massachusetts and Rhode Island and other parts of Sun. When we pulled building permits, we had to actually, say what we were doing with our debris. And if it was a $10,000 or $20,000 building permit, we had to actually have construction dumpsters on site. It was part of the deal. If we'd had less than that, we would have to pay a $200 upfront fee to handle the C and D stuff. So you already got the money for the C and D, and then you went to the transfer station and dumped it there. I think a lot of this stuff is what you're talking about is either people not pulling building permits, but if they did pull a building permit at $10,000, they should be on there. One is, do you have a dumpster on site? Mandatory. Or if not, you have to have a fee to use the C and D dumpster right up front. That way, if these guys are doing the work and they don't know what to do at the end of the day, the stuff's all over the place. They don't need to stuff somebody's dumpster.
Well, but the issue I think that we're talking about isn't the problem isn't
Then with the
with
contractors.
those contractors generally have dumpsters.
The big ones do, but even a homeowner that's pulling a $10,000 permit.
Get ready your bed, you're getting a new bed, maybe not just.
Right, right.
This is not a
UTV.
permit, I mean, the permit.
I understand, but
We already asked them to get.
it's a one line item on the building permits. And we had this by law, had to tell them where it was going, what we were doing with it.
Yeah, but-
And that cut down a lot of stuff.
But our concern though is not permit related work. It's
Right.
somebody coming into their condo on a Saturday, Sunday
Right.
and replacing the vanity or tearing out a wall and putting up a new wall themselves. And that's what's gonna cause the issue that Jim's talking about. So this isn't a permitted activity.
Right.
So, and we're trying to get away from this maintenance type of thing, but it's creating another, potentially another problem. If we go to windways, that's the issue.
No, that's this waste energy plant down there. They lay it on the floor and they're gonna go through it on the floor, then they'll push it in.
Yeah,
And it's usually though, most like hazard stuff like batteries and propane.
Oh, yeah, they look for that.
They'll be looking for that as well, but they're gonna, they do.
They don't want to take
have-
C and D.
They just don't want to take C and D.
well, yeah, that, you're absolutely right, Craig, but every other town has control over their waste stream. We don't.
Right, but.
So somebody could put a bag of batteries in the waste stream
Right,
and we would never know it.
right.
And it would also have to be picking out anything with motors, like, you know how many vacuum cleaners get thrown out of here? Every time, so when the dumpster goes up, then if there's something in there that's gotta come out, the dumpster has to go down, unhook the cable, drive the truck forward, pull the stuff out. And then back up and hook up, and I'm just pointing out the logistics, that's all.
Have you thought of doing a transfer station here?
We are for single family.
We do only for the single.
So you don't, I
family.
mean,
We
pick
can't
up,
bring all 70, we have 70 dumpsters, we
Yeah.
can't bring those all here.
They looked at compactors a long time ago.
Yeah,
And we have looked at building a facility for compactors and having our own.
so you dump it on a
tipping
floor and then you can see it.
That was over- That,
we had one of
20
those.
years ago, that was over $1 million.
We'll
to
we'll have to
build
stay-
that type
this-
of facility.
Energy waste plant there.
Mhm.
How long is they're giving you a good deal on a contract for
A
multiple years?
3-year contract.
That's it?
Yeah.
What's the, so there are two bottom lines here generally, as I see it. One is, what's the difference, what's the added cost going to wind waste? As just one part of this. I understand the other part is operational,
Right, so the 40,000,
which we had in the
we
warrant,
would,
not good enough.
no, I don't think the 40,000, if we have to do all of this additional work, keeping the C and D can open more so that people, I mean, it's going to add a lot of money. It's a matter of how much are we willing to put in there, because we could be talking about part-time people. Because of the hours of operation, what can we expect from those people who are using those 55 dumpsters out there? That are not controlled, and how
Right.
much do we want to give them the opportunity to come here to get rid of CO? And all of that.
The only thing that we can really quantify, to tell you the truth, is what the first year at Wind Waste would cost to bring the stuff down and dump it. That's really the only thing that we can really quantify. The other stuff is kind of,
And that's the 40,000.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the contract.
We know.
40,000 more than we're paying.
40,000 more
In
than
addition
taking
to-
it to Bethlehem, but
Right.
that does not allow us to keep the transfer station open any extra. Or do more with the C.
So operational changes are gonna add on to the cost.
potentially, yes.
Well, or we're going to have to, the education
Mhm.
is gonna be harsh, because you're gonna be calling associations all the time. And you're gonna be getting the property management companies in to check those dumpsters, and you're gonna have situations where the dumpster is sitting there full, but you can't tip it because there's bathroom, bathroom.
Not a good look at Christmas and New Year's.
No, and those are times when we don't have those sorts of, this is a lot more than when we initially looked at it.
Right.
It's a lot more restrictive than we were anticipating.
Do they have one fee for tipping down at Concord there, or is there just,
Yes, one,
they don't have
no,
mixed use, right?
no, there's no mixed use,
No.
because you've got, now, like Laconia uses wind waste. They have curbside pickup, but you don't have to worry about the construction debris, because they're just picking up a trash can
Right,
and putting it in the back of the truck.
so maybe curbside might be better.
Well, curbside is gonna be a personnel and equipment issue, because our one truck and our two guys are not going to be able to do curbside. And curbside, I mean, I've lived in properties where we had curbside, you get one crack at getting your trash taken away
Right.
every week. And we have so many non-resident property owners. How do they handle their trash, right? I mean, because not everybody's here on Tuesday.
So you're gonna have to put a C and D dumpster up. with the
Yes.
Regular dumpsters.
Yes, there will be one.
Well, we can't put a C and D dumpster at each condo association.
You could.
Well, you could, but it would be very expensive. And we don't pick up the C and D dumpster.
Right.
All we pick up, that's handled by a
Like
contractor.
I said,
If we go with the seller.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
John, I think, John Racine?
I was wondering if this is time to have a little discussion about Bethlehem closing. Have we ever thought about what we're gonna do in the future for that? And should we start discussion about it now? Maybe some kind of discussion about it, about them closing?
Well,
Then what do you do?
right now, they're permitted for according to them, they're permitted for 5 years.
I'm sorry, according to who?
According to Casella, the provider.
Casella
North Country
State.
Environmental Service.
Do we believe Casella? Is that okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
we have to believe Casella because they're the ones who
Okay.
are running the facility.
Okay.
So
But, you know, if I
if
have
it's
the
only
correct-
3 years, no, if it's only 3 years, it's only 3 years, but right now, they're telling us 5 years.
Okay,
Wind Waste is offering us a 3-year contract at Hampton. So it's 3 to 5 years. Regardless of what.
And most of the
We do
towns,
know that Bethlehem's residents are trying to close that,
They are.
right?
Yeah.
So do we want to talk about that as a town or no? Do we care? Do you
Well,
guys
how-
care?
How do we, care in what way?
If they close that, don't we want to start discussing what we would do from that point on? Am I going too far forward or?
there'll be other C&D
Yeah.
construction guys coming on.
There will, there will. The state at some point is going to have to say,
There'll be.
this is what you're,
they're involved already.
why, they're already,
Okay, good.
they're, because,
So as a citizen, me and a lot of other people don't know that answer, so that's why I'm kind
Yeah.
of raising
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
So we
Oh,
all
I get
get it.
I get it.
Okay, thank you.
It sounds like Wind Waste is gonna be a real stretch.
It is
A financial stretch as well as.
as a operational.
It doesn't fit well our
Operation.
operations.
And unfortunately, we don't have, because we're under the AOC, we have to build what we proposed, right? We don't have any time to build a transfer station like they have down in Thornton.
Correct.
We just, basically, all we have time to do is move this operation up there.
Right.
And
Now, let me ask a question. We, in our interim transfer station, could we have a couple of dumpsters that were dedicated to wind waste acceptable material?
It's the other way around.
yeah,
You go the opposite.
it would, yeah, we would want to get people in the habit of separating out their C and D. So we would want dumpsters down here that are C and D, but it doesn't really, and you're thinking about training people to think about this?
No, I was thinking, I was trying to think of some way to respond to people's desire to recycle.
So you'd have some truck that go down to Wind Waste and you'd have some trucks that go up to.
Yeah, and maybe they don't go as frequently if people are not willing to do what needs to be done for the wind waste.
Well, the numbers that Wind Waste gave us are based on 800 tons a year.
Yeah.
So if we reduce that, I'm sure the per ton cost will go
And
up. But
as a, probably one of the biggest dumpster users in town, at least on hockey weekends. I don't mind separating materials if it's well defined, like a kind of tile. If I, pry up a tile, can it go in the dumpster? Are they gonna kick it for something that small? Or are we talking about the whole bathroom full of tiles?
It's the mattress. And the
I mean, you know,
This is the
then-
dumpster, sure.
if they're not separating the load down there. Okay, so typically we go in with 10 tons and you dump it on the floor and they kind of go through it and everything. You know, they're looking for the obvious stuff.
So if there's a smashed piece of a toilet lid there, they're not gonna kick the load.
Probably not.
But if there's like 6 toilets in there, they are.
Then they will.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yes.
So
And
as,
your flag.
yeah, as a guy, like to your point, as a guy with a dumpster, I do gather up all my C and D stuff
Mhm.
and we keep it someplace and then we try to get over there on Monday, Wednesday or Friday.
Correct.
We load up the back of the truck,
Mhm.
look like the Beverly Hillbillies as we, go down the road and we put it in the C and D dumpster. Now, we have had instances where we've had that entire truck loaded to the hilt and gotten there and the dumpster was full. That's embarrassing and super inconvenient. We had to unload the pickup truck to be able to use it.
Mhm.
So somebody did mention you will need more C and D pickups to prevent situations like that. We don't mind separating out the stuff, even in small volume, items like trash cans full of items.
So right now you don't have to.
We don't have to. I don't mind doing it, but
And,
I think,
and we don't mind if you take a garbage can full of that stuff and put it in your dumpster.
because it goes right in and goes right up to
It's
Bethlehem.
going the same
But if
place.
you're gonna do
That's,
this other place and you need to separate it, I would need a dumpster that I can go dump that barrel of stuff into. So, and maybe it's a different color. You paint those ones blue and the other ones are green or something like that.
the interim transfer station will be manned and you will be told where to go and
Yeah.
and that person will be in charge of saying, hey, that goes over here and that's $20. Well, you don't dump it. That goes over there, that's free, they'll be able to direct
But it's
the
not-
users.
I'm not worried about
No.
anyone here in.
No.
in
No,
this room.
it's
a
55.
It's a condo association and it's the transient guest and it's the non-resident property owner who's brand new, just bought their condo. And they're doing a renovation and now we have a dumpster that we got a problem with. It is education and we have so many people that are here very infrequently. Or maybe once in their lives. So that's what I'm more worried about, because that's the majority of our waste is coming from those people. And it is, like Craig said, it's a completely different way of doing trash.
Correct.
The Monday, Wednesday, Friday might be a problem.
It's gonna be a problem.
It's already a problem today.
It is, yeah.
It's kind of a problem today. I mean,
Well, it's not as much of a problem because the C and D can go in the dumpster and when they're here on the weekend, they.
No, I mean, like-
put it in the dumpster.
I bring stuff to the dumpster out back and I have to constantly think, well, what day is it?
Right. No, and we appreciate you guys that are here and
Yeah.
know what needs to be separated doing that, but.
I think you're gonna find when they're gonna dump it on the floor, but they're not gonna get that picky unless you got like, a whole motel worth of stuff in
Well,
here.
no, that's not what we're.
CMAS,
They are-
CMAS did it down the Cape, down in Southern Mass, and they they needed their tonnage to burn,
Well, it's just it.
you're
Stuff's supposed to burn.
right. Vacuum cleaner won't burn, but, and
Well,
sheet rock
that's
won't burn
their issue, and I guess they're pretty stringent.
at first.
So what's the bottom line here, Mark? Are you telling
No,
us
I-
not to go forward with the warrant article, to bring on, to see if the town wants to go?
Not at 40,000. If you
It's not
wanna
going to
move
be.
Forward, I
It'll
think
be
we
much-
need to do some more calculating. Come up with a better number than the 40,000. And it may be additional time, additional personnel time or whatever. In that calculation,
Sure,
but it's
so it
gonna be a
happened.
lot more than $40,000 from what I can see, because we gotta make the C and D can accessible. We've gotta account for additional staff time. to handle these situations. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know, and I, I don't wanna get a system in place that then we find out 4 months into the year that we start with them, that it's just not sustainable.
Right,
So-
and 4 months into a 3-year contract.
It's also more expensive for those 55 dumpster owners or.
Exactly, because we've got to, and we've got to bring in I don't know if the property management companies feel like they can support this.
It's
Or the
difficult.
association president.
I'm pretty well staffed and it's difficult for me and it's more costly because now some of the things that I can get away with putting in that dumpster,
Right,
not anymore. And now I'm paying more C&D drop money.
exactly.
So it's not only more expensive than what's on that paper, but for us as well, for the rest of the community.
So there's,
I don't know if it's worth,
just so everybody is aware that Pemmy Baker Solid Waste District, which I'm the chair of now, I guess. We signed a contract with Casella for the NCES landfill for the next 5 years. And there's 19 towns. So. And so we get a group rate,
Right.
and that gets
Right,
passed
right.
along to each town.
Bob, Margaret, anything?
I'm not sure it should be a warrant item just because of too much uncertainty. The cost is really high and.
And we don't even make it work.
I think they make it work, right?
I mean, once we get the new transfer station in, we run it for a few months and understand what those changes are gonna bring, because those are gonna be big changes for you guys, especially. Maybe we could do it in 24 or 25 or something like that, but I don't,
But you can't just get a 1-year contract. with
No.
them.
with Casella,
No, it's not.
no.
No, but we've been assured, that was the question that came up. And I'm the one that asked the question, it's in the minutes. Casella told us that at any given time, that if a town voted not to take to the landfill in Bethlehem. You still have a contract for your C&D. You still have a contract for your bulky items, and any other service that they provide. And,
So we could get out of the household waste.
But if we were to re-up with Bethlehem, what would the terms look like?
with.
Well,
Right,
we'd be able to modify the numbers that are in here. To just go back to Bethlehem, it would be less than what's going to be,
right.
even with the new tipping fee.
But would,
Sir Patrick Marr from Tri Pyramid. Would wind still be an option if you deferred it for a decision 2 years from now or a year from now, or?
We
do you
can
have
go
to
back
lock
to
in?
them and see.
Quite
If they
possible.
want to offer us a contract.
Well,
Yeah.
will they have too many subscribers at some point and then we
That's
miss the opportunity, or
Good question.
do we need to lock in now into a 3-year contract, lower the amount of tonnage? So
Well,
we
we
have
went
that
out,
option.
we went out to try to find a recycling option. Of some sort. Because we know that we can't do anything meaningful here until we finish the treatment plant project. So, I don't know if they'll be available in a year or two.
They weren't the easiest people.
They weren't the easiest people to get
Yeah.
right now, so they're stressed, and if something happens to NCES, to John's question. I don't know if it'll be harder to get.
They're up and running now.
Oh, yeah, they've been running for years.
It's always good to have two deals, two options.
Yeah, but the problem is, you gotta tell them what the use is. That's my
Split it up.
problem at this point.
Yeah, I think you should go with it.
You can't, but then if you tell Wind Waste, we're gonna take 200 tons of material to you, what's your price? And they give us a price, and then we end up taking 13 tons to them. That's not gonna be good for them, because then they haven't generated the energy.
Because they've excluded tonnage from.
I mean, excluded. Potentially excluded tonnage from other people.
So we can meet a 200 ton requirement. or Whatever, whatever.
It's for 800.
Right.
The quote is for 800, so the numbers would definitely change if we said only 2. I don't know,
Be more
I think I
expensive
need
per
to
ton.
think about this more and kind of plan it out a little bit differently about what the system looks like, because it's not as much a money issue.
Yeah.
It's the unknowns that's bothering me.
When do we have to make a decision as to,
Well, whatever gets talked about on the 8th needs to be, whatever your final decision is, needs to be somewhere near that.
Near what?
I mean,
What date?
well, February 8th.
Okay.
But we've got to
In terms of the
produce
budget.
this packet to distribute around town by next week.
And this is really a question of a warrant article too.
Right.
Whether we want to advance it or not. Because we have the Casella built into the budget.
Casella is built into the budget. And then, with those increases that we put in the regular budget to go to Casella, we could transition with the additional warrant amount, whatever that ends up being, to go down the windows, starting on May 1st.
Question,
Yes,
did Casella raise their rates this year?
Yes,
Slightly.
Up to how much?
It's, don't quote me, but it's right around $76 a ton versus,
71.
74.37 a ton times 800 tons.
Right,
Yeah.
so did
Yeah.
you guys figure out that our costs are about $300 per ton? The whole cost, the transporting of the trash, the employees, everything. Is that what you figured out some months ago? It costs us $300 per ton. Does that ring a bell? It doesn't ring a bell.
so transportation costs were around $25 a ton, plus the 7 will be about 100.
Yeah.
$100 a ton for MSW.
right,
Well, she said including labor.
I'm saying everything,
Well,
the car, yeah.
Well, that's right, that
The
was just
total cost.
transportation costs, so.
Right,
Yeah, I did not divide, so right now we're looking at an MSW budget of 300 and say $320,000 divided by the 800
Mhm.
tons. Well,
mhm,
it's slightly more than that, it's probably.
mhm.
But on this, we could defer a final decision on this warrant article until our next meeting. The 20, we don't have that much time even.
We've got because we can put it out on the 26th. Which is 2 weeks before the budget hearing. So, yeah, you can wait until the 25th if you want.
What do you guys prefer? Make a decision now or think about it some more? And I don't know if you want to work up anything more.
I understand what they me that I'm in trouble processing. We stay with Casella. We go with Wind Waste, or is there another alternative? To go partially with Wind Waste and, I don't know, but yeah.
If we tried, if we would have to negotiate numbers with them, if we tried to break it up. If we do that, it's gonna be a higher per ton cost, and gonna increase that cost. To do that, and I'm not sure what the benefit of trying to do that is, other than saying that we recycle as percentage of our waste.
Well, I'm trying to respond to whatever it was, the 78% of people who said, you
Yeah.
want to recycle,
No, I
we'll
know.
pay more for it.
But I don't know if they take 200 tons or 150 tons, whatever. we want. We'd have to have-
Sounds to me like we gotta wait until we open up this new facility and then hopefully we can readdress the issue. That's how it sounds to me, but.
Whatever numbers we agree to, I would put a pretty significant contingency, like 10 or 15% in here. Because we don't have the option of going back to another town meeting. It's costing us more than we thought. So whatever we do here, right now, all the numbers we've given you and talked about, there's no contingency for it costing something different once we start off. And remember, it's gonna be all 70 dumpsters that are uncontrolled for this year, right? Because
Right,
none of
that's
those-
what
Right, now those
none
are
of those are
controlled.
controlled.
I think we have to pass until we get a new facility, then relook at it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm leaning in that direction myself. But I'm willing to, keep it open, a couple more weeks if Margaret, you want to think about it some more, or Bob. I see us in a real bind here.
So is there value in the town voting on it and rejecting it? Right, if 78% of the people said, we need you to do something, and you brought this forward as a solution and show that the cost is X amount absorbent, and then the town says, no, we're not gonna do that. At least, you responded to the 78% of the population with a
One issue with
dual
the
voice.
cost, which I think addresses what you're saying, is, people could say, yeah, the cost is. Instead of being 40,000 more, it's 50,000, 60,000 more.
or whatever number you think. it
But
is.
can we actually do it
Do it.
operationally?
Yeah.
50,000 dumpsters scattered around town. I mean, is it practical that we can actually do this?
Without getting whacked with fines.
Well, and, we have enough employees to go.
Yeah.
Yes, as a member of an association board that works closely with the property manager, I think you just put it on the board and the property manager to clean up their dumpster operation.
When the dumpster does get dumped, that's
Yeah.
not who they call.
I don't know, as a member of a board, I get called on a lot of things, and I think that just dumpster would just be one more thing they call me about, and then I'll talk to my property.
I mean,
They call Jim.
Yeah.
if it was just a matter of money, I think, yeah, let's put it in front of. But what I'm hearing from our town staff and operators are that it's very questionable that we're gonna be able to make this thing work without it. Additional costs that we can't really anticipate right now. But they would be significant. And I basically
I
reading
mean,
that right.
what we can quantify, we know is gonna be the 40 to 60
Right.
thousand when we,
Right,
and we have all the numbers to back that up. It's all of these unknowns. I can't put a number on that. I mean, what do you put in? Do you put in 100,000? Do you put in, what's too much? I don't know what it's gonna be.
Also,
And
as
it's,
a business owner, if this gets put to a vote and the town votes yes, because they're all like, oh, they're
Right.
saving the
Right.
planet. And now I'm being asked to completely change my waste management process without the town having done anything to accommodate the changes they're asking me to make. So if I would be afraid to see this get voted yes, to change this to this, and I'd have to deal with it for a year.
If we put together an estimate, I would put together the cost of
additional, right.
additional personnel,
Yeah.
additional,
Oh,
roofs, and, all of those
Additional-
kind of things that the town. would have to
Additional
do.
dumpsters, that would go
So
into
it's
the.
not just the difference in rate, it's all of these other things we have to do in an attempt at least. To make sure that what we're dumping is going to be acceptable to wind waste.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that it sounds like an operational nightmare for Jim and the town. If he feels that it's not feasible, I think he knows best what's going on in the town. But I do want to make a point. One of the reasons, I won't get into the philosophy that I've seen with Casella. One of the reasons Casella is not a good choice in the hierarchy of what is green. So landfill is the worst possible. It's at the bottom. Then up 2 levels is the waste, WTE. Waste to energy facility. As you know, the Concord facility, we call it Concord, but whatever town it's in, it's exit 17W. They provide power for 17 or 15,000 homes right now. So this is a good way to be a little greener, just help the environment a bit, but we're just.
I mean, that was the thought.
It's too.
That's why we explored this path.
Right, so Jim is saying yes.
No, I
It sounds way too difficult. But I'm not happy with Casella, you know that.
I've heard.
They have, they have not been environmentally friendly. Their PR material is false. And we have scientists to back it up, so I'm very disappointed. If we have to do it, we have to do it, but I'm not happy.
Well, I'm with you, I think. I mean,
We're all with you.
yeah, but we're struggling to find a way. Is there
What
possibly?
do the other
we can
towns
still
do?
Do this. We're not coming up with anything.
Hampton, Thornton, have their own transfers. They have their own
Yeah.
transfer facility.
So they're dumping it and sorting it,
They're dumping it, sorting it.
It's what's coming out.
Well,
and they won't take our truck.
No,
They won't.
No.
We've
How about
asked,
Plymouth?
we've asked Plymouth, we've
Yeah.
asked Hampton, Thornton. We've even gone to Holderness and
Yeah.
asked them.
So
Well, they
there's
have
no,
closing on the weekends, so people are bringing their trash up here.
Yeah,
well, there's one other thing, go out there, Eric. Ashland is asking for money for a feasibility study in the upcoming, town meeting for a waste to energy plant. So
maybe we can get it on the ground floor of that.
you never know.
Ashland would actually own it.
All right,
Yes, they generate their own power.
I would
Go ahead.
move that we table this particular warrant article, unfortunately. At least for this year, and come back at it again, next year.
Sorry.
All right, I think that's the 3-0 that way.
Thank you for your efforts.
Wish we.
Sorry.
Wish we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish we had better info, but yes, so we will delete that.
No test program, right?
No
It's not possible to do a test program.
They're not gonna take our, just that, they're really not, they're gonna charge us a huge premium. I don't think it's gonna be worth it.
All right, so I think, are we done with our budget? Anything further we need to discuss on the budget, or do you have enough to give us some quote unquote final budget numbers for us to review for the public hearing on the budget?
Yep.
So we're done with the budget.
You're done with the budget if you don't have it.
Either of you folks have anything else to say on the budget? Okay, so let us finish that, or we are done with that. I have one last thing in public, in the public hearing, excuse me, in the regular board meeting today. And that is a discussion, continued discussion on town investment policy. So I see that the chair of the trust. Trustees of the trust fund is here, and we had discussed this earlier, but I think you wanted to.
Well, I have a
That's further.
statement about the
Please.
wastewater
Okay.
treatment facility, but I think you were also gonna update me on your discussion with the auditors.
Yep.
Around.
Yeah, it's part of this.
Okay,
part of
okay,
discussion.
if you wanna do that first, that's fine.
Right, so there were a lot of questions after our last discussion. So the first thing was the town excess funds. As I told you, I needed to do some more investigating. I talked to Vashon Cloutier, who are our new auditors.
Yep.
I reviewed the investment of excess town funds. That is handled by RSA 4129.
Yep.
The state or the town treasurer.
Mhm.
So the town treasurer has custody of
Yes, I.
excess funds. And there is a limit. You had a question when I had made the comment about using the example of junk bonds, but collateralization and insurance
Yep.
of funds. That's all laid out in these statutes.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
these statutes lay out what can be invested in. and limits what the treasurer can do with the money. That is.
Forty-one twenty-nine has a,
4129.
it states which investment you can be in.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And then, so. The way we do it now is by 4129. So when we do tax collections, when we do water sewer bill collections, when we do, we get bond issue money in for a project that we're doing. Those all fall under 4129. So that, I think, addressed most of your questions about excess funds and the investment of those funds. Okay, it's a separate issue with the capital reserves and all that.
I thought you had told me
We
that
can-
4125 covered the approved investments.
4129,
If it's 4129, okay, I'll check that.
okay? So, you can look at that, but I think that takes care of.
New Hampshire PDIP, our
It is actually listed in the statutes.
It says that New Hampshire PDIP is an
Is
investment
possible.
advisor. Okay.
Well, no, it does not say that it's an investment advisor. It says that it is an allowed vehicle for the treasurer to use. So,
That's different than saying that it's there are an investment advisor.
correct, because funds invested under 4129 are not subject to the town's investment policy. Those are separate funds. This controls how the town's excess operating monies, right? And the bond monies that we're using for specific projects. This is separate from capital reserves, trust funds, and everything else. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
the investment policy that we've been talking about modified only has to do with the trust funds, the investment funds.
The trustees of the
the-
trust
that
funds.
the
Okay,
trustees of
that
the
is
trust fund
very different than what
control.
I was told
Right,
when I started in that role.
and that was what our auditors said. So any excess monies that are under the purview of the
Okay,
treasurer
okay.
can be done.
Let
in
me
one
check
of these.
4129. I did
Yeah.
read 4129. I don't remember seeing a list of approved investments.
Well, look at section 2 and look at sections
I'll read
4
both.
and 6.
Okay, that's fine. But that. We still, the point is that we still, if we go to prudent investor.
Yep.
Whether it's for the town or for just the trustees and trust funds. We need the RSA states that we have to employ the trust department of a bank or brokerage as an investment advisor. If we don't do that. For the trustees, if we don't do that, and I don't think having them as our investment manager.
Mhm.
Fix that, which is what I thought you were gonna ask the auditors. If we don't, we shouldn't make that change. Which kind of makes me confused even.
Well, you're correct. We would need a financial advisor for the funds that are under the control of the trustees.
That
of
would
the
be
trust
crazy.
funds. If we
For the amount we
make the
have.
change, because of the amount that you have.
I say we push this off until I had a chance to read 4129. I'll let you know if I have any more questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, but you had something,
I do, now I still have something on the wastewater treatment facility.
have at it.
So this is a tough one because I'm on the wastewater treatment facility finance committee. And when my first meeting, I learned how much BFI was gonna cost. I learned the reasons it was gonna be so expensive that we could not possibly have anticipated. But we did know that we had a 50-year-old transfer station. So we knew we'd have to spend some money. And I think that's all agreed that there was an understanding that we would have to spend a lot of money. So At this point, I reran some of the numbers, and when we borrow all that money, we have a certain amount of money we expect to get from grants. If we get that many grants, which we'll be lucky to get, we will have to borrow all the rest. And based on the current assumptions, and I'm using 4.5%, which is a number that you had referenced at the hearing about the senior home that was in a recent bond deal. It's going to cause our tax rate to go up in 27-28 timeframe by 27%. And that left me uncomfortable because I wouldn't expect a tax rate to be shooting up that much. And my first question was, well, why didn't we save money for this? Why didn't, if we knew we had a 50-year-old plant, if we knew we were waiting for the permit, why didn't we put money aside like we do for the fire truck and the roads and everything else in the capital reserves? I asked the question several times. Each time I got different answers. The most logical response I got was the one that said, we like to make sure that the users of the plant are the ones paying for the plant. So the logic was that for the past 50 years, the users of the old plant should be the ones paying for the old plant, and the users of the new plant should be the ones paying for the new plant. That's why we didn't save money. And that made a lot of sense to me. But when I really thought about it, the truth be told, while it's a great idea in philosophy and principle, I don't think that's what we're actually doing. And let me explain why. If you look at the plant, over time, I know that the water rates only cover the regular operation, the daily, monthly operation of the plant. It covers maintenance, but it doesn't cover the depreciation of that plant. So what I'm saying is that for the past 50 years, users of the plant have not been paying for the plant. They've been paying for the regular operation. They have not paid for the cost of that plant. And if they had, through the water rates, and you built a reserve, there wouldn't be this huge jump in our tax rate. I'm recommending a philosophy here, a philosophy of saving for the future. Making sure that we look at all the large projects coming up and say, maybe we should be building a capital reserve for this so as not to have a huge jump, which is going to make people uncomfortable. You're going to lose credibility with your tax rate jumping out. So that's where I'm coming.
Thank you, Amy. It was very, I think I understand it better now.
Thank you.
So I appreciate all your work on this. So are you saying, if I'm understanding it correctly, that we should have higher, say, sewage rates to and put that money aside, some of that money aside?
Yes, which I believe.
You're not talking about a tax rate.
Yeah,
Add
I
$1 a year to the
I
tax
learned
rate.
that well, personally, whether it's like Mark always says, it's the same pocket, whether it's in
Yeah,
water rate
Peter
or
Paul.
separate.
Yeah.
So I didn't really care, but I did come across a regular RSA that said that you are not allowed to raise money through taxes for a wastewater treatment facility. I don't know why, but it said you can do that with reserves from the water rates. So if you're really going to charge the users for the use of the plant, the rates should have been higher. I know I'm going to be so popular after this. The rates should have been higher. You would have raised built a capital reserve, which would have smoothed out, just like smoothing out stock prices, where you want to smooth out your tax rate or your bills. Now, I don't want to focus on this being what you should have done 20, 30 years ago. It's done, this is what we have to do, and it's going to pass because we have no choice. We have to flush the toilet. I'm just saying that when you get pushback on water rates, and you get pushback on tax rates, you're not helping anybody if those water rates and tax rates don't truly reflect full cost of running the town. It's not, what's the point? That's my,
We've not been adding depreciation.
because, yeah,
Okay.
and in general, and I just want to make sure that we always
In the
do
cost.
that, yeah. Think of the full cost and try to minimize jumps in the tax rate.
We didn't do that.
No, I'm not saying.
No, I'm just saying, now what?
I'm saying in the future, when you go to raise water rates
Right,
and you get pushback, you should say, this is what it costs to have a waste, this is what it costs to flush your toilets. If
we
we,
have raised rates. We have been raising rates, but we've been raising rates, but
right,
but for the operate, to transfer as much as the operation.
Capital is,
Okay, go
capital payments.
payments
are in.
as well, for
So the only thing, Amy, so really what you would be talking about is that $2.40 or whatever it ends up being increase starting in 2027. Plus another amount, well, wait a minute.
oh, yeah, no,
What you are saying
no, I don't.
right now
For the next-
Mhm.
is we would have to pay back the loan.
Alone, I know it.
Okay, and what you're asking future boards to do, or
Mhm, mhm,
recommending here, is to add an amount of money to that $2
Mhm.
plus that the tax rate's going to change.
And I
Because
know.
from day one, you would have to be raising over the next 50 years, $40 million to replace the next plant,
Yes,
okay?
because of the
Okay, so-
position we're in,
Wait, okay, but so what we have, the philosophy that the town has followed is we are not going to charge that delta, okay? What we are going to do is when this plant needs to be repaired, whoever the taxpayers are at that time will pay for the repair. As an example, we have updated the clarifier tanks. We have installed a new SCADA and alarm system.
Mhm.
We have put in dual media filter tank repairs. We've replaced the media in them. We've done an electric control panel replacement. We've done the headworks. We've put in a new emergency generator in. We've replaced chlorine tanks. Those are all things that, like the fire truck situation, right, that capital reserve, that money would have been used towards those repairs.
and they were used
And
for that,
so we-
absolutely,
Right, so.
but that's not depreciation, that's maintenance.
Right, but the depreciation, if. So you're gonna ask taxpayers for 50 years to put their money away for somebody in the future.
No, for use of the wastewater treatment, I understand that there's a catch up here. You're absolutely correct, and would I do it right now? No. You know, you got enough with 27%, but maybe as soon as that debt is paid off. That's
Okay,
when you
well,
start to,
that's-
I was prepared for that question, if you.
Well, no, I'm just saying, well, but taxpayers need to understand what we're talking about doing.
I
If you're
understand.
saying do it after the 20 or 25-year debt service payments, that's a conversation for
Right.
25 years.
And all I'm trying to say to you is that I know you're under a lot of pressure to keep the rates low. I know. You get, people want, every time you ask for money, people aren't gonna love it. I'm just saying that. This is the way, here's an analysis that you can show them that says this is the real full cost. This is what it costs to maintain it. This is what it costs to, keep the lights on. This is what it costs to keep people in the building doing what they do. this is what it costs to fix stuff, and this is what it costs to pay for the building that's depleting over time. And eventually, that just needs to be.
Right.
Picked up.
It's just it is a
It's the mindset.
180-degree change in the approach to.
But that's
everything
what
that we
led
do.
us to a 27% jump in tax rates, which.
You don't want to make it
Which makes
54, do you?
Hmm?
You don't want to make it 54%, do you?
I don't know.
Well, that's what you're saying.
Wait until the debt, that's why I'm saying the debt should pay off, but if you thought
Let's
about this.
make it 100%.
10 years ago, You.
Well, we did think about it 10 years ago.
What the hell,
And
LPD?
we made improvements to the plan.
But you didn't get depreciation.
We did not capture
That's
depreciation
what I'm saying.
because we didn't anticipate having to replace the plant.
Mm.
The entire plant.
It's 50 years old.
Well, no. You, but
been upgraded.
upgrading is a lot different than replacing. And we could not have known 50 years ago that we were gonna have a permit that was gonna require totally different technology.
Nothing lasts forever. Every single asset depletes over time.
Yep, and
It's plain old, it's great.
The other thing that happens is that when the old plan got paid off after 25 years or 30 years, whatever it was, over the next 20 years, that gave the town some room to build this building, to build the gymnasium at the school,
That's my.
you know, and so it wasn't like, you know, if we all to put money away for the new plant, we wouldn't have been able to have a gymnasium or this building or a lot of other things in town.
I completely agree.
So it's a philosophy.
I'm saying that if the tax rate and the water rates don't reflect the true cost of the town, including all of the things you're talking about, you're gonna be trying to catch up. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think towns always try to catch up because
We could.
and there are some communities that do put money away. They do not believe as a community in borrowing. But they've done that from the time they started, right?
So it's not
It's
possible
decades.
to
And,
improve
and
that.
right now, we're in a very, I would agree that in 25 years, it might make sense for the town to talk about, do we want to count any portion of the depreciation of this plan? But there's not gonna be any way, there's not gonna be any way in the next 20 to 25 years to do that while you're paying, you know.
I guess if there's any other big surprises out there,
Well, they're not even surprises, Amy. They're roads. There's 1 million gallons of water in our reservoirs, that one of the reservoirs is 40 years old. You know, I mean, it's everything that we do. This building is now 40 years old.
right?
We have not put a penny away in depreciation on
And
this. building.
you're gonna need to do that too in 2027.
Well,
So it's
It's
gonna
in the
go, it's
CIP.
gonna be more than 27%.
well, maybe.
Get a sewer
But,
district.
you know, so it's a philosophical issue of how much money you put away. And how much more the current taxpayers have to bear of that future cost. And so, you know, if you're talking about potentially doing it in 25 years, to let that community have the conversation, because it's gonna be totally different than the community to it. And they may have other concerns that.
I've already decided I'm not gonna.
He's not gonna be on the floor.
So I appreciate what you're saying, but it is a fundamental, totally opposite change in the way this community has been
So
funded.
we're strapped by the decisions made 100 years ago.
Yep.
Is what you're saying.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
We can't improve. We're
We
just gonna
can't
borrow
change it right
money
now.
and pay more in interest because of the.
Well, sometimes you pay more, sometimes you pay less.
Unless we get a nice large donation down the road.
And the other thing exacerbating this, and it's going to happen in the future too, because it's cyclical. For the last almost 15 years, it has cost virtually nothing to borrow the money. Okay, when we're paying 1% interest.
This is not a discussion on interest rates.
No, I under, but it impacts the decision.
No.
But yeah, well.
No,
I
because
think
you shouldn't be taking interest rates and your expectation of interest rates into account in your decision making. as a
Unfortunately, I think communities do take that.
Well, you borrow at the same rate that you invest at, right? AAAM, so over time, it should be.
Well, I don't know. I just think that when a taxpayer is looking at their tax bill in front of them on that day.
That's what I'm trying
That
to
is
help
what
you.
drives, well.
That's why I was trying to help you. Okay.
I certainly understand. I think we all understand things much more clearly and, yes. Greg.
No, along those lines, I don't go to the meetings all the time, but are you going ahead with a sewer treatment plant and are we gonna get sewer on Snows Mountain Road?
We are getting.
Yes and no, I think.
Yes and no.
Yes. and
You're only
no.
going one way?
Now.
We are getting a new sewer treatment plant. And no, we are not extending the sewer line up
Why not?
Snows Mountain.
Why not?
Well, right now it's cost prohibitive,
Well, how do you know that?
because engineers have estimated.
It's like
the cost
30% of your single family homes are on one road. And you're gonna have to do a district because I'm not paying for 27% on a plant I can't even touch. I mean, that's against the Constitution of the United States. You cannot tax me for some unrepresentation. So, I mean, if you don't create a sewer district to let the sewer people pay for the sewer plant, that's fine. And if you're not forcing me not to allow me to go in there. I don't see it how it's prohibited. I drive down 93 all the time. I see ledge left and right. I don't see them going up and on, up and down. They're cutting right through it. So it can be done.
It can.
And it's not like one or two houses. If it's one or two houses, that would be fine. But my sewer treatment plant at the house, it will be 50 grand to replace, and I know I have to replace it. And on top of that, you're telling me that I have to pay taxes on it. And the abatement stuff does not cut it, because it's not exactly dollar for dollar. You know, my property is depreciated probably maybe 100, maybe 200,000 because of non-sewer, not, 10 grand or something, stupid number. And we're just gonna have to sue, I guess, if that's what you're saying. And we could, you've got to create a district if you're not going to include all the residents and you're going to tax all the residents. Every other town that I've done business in, they had a sewer or water district and they paid for their sewer or water, so that's fine. And the ones that were excluded or couldn't tie in didn't have to pay. I mean, you can't ask me to pay for something that I'm never allowed to use.
You are though.
You are
Bring your,
not.
when
you
you
are
put
not
the septic
paying-
thing,
I'm not, I can bring it anywhere I want. I don't have to bring it to yours.
we don't charge you to bring it.
I can bring it anywhere I want.
Well, so two things. Number one, you get free septic disposal, number one, and number two, you don't pay sewer fees. You only pay water.
It's,
fees.
I don't want to pay for that plant
Well,
out of my tax rate.
okay, then I don't know what to tell you. It's going to be part of the tax rate
If it
right
was
now
part of
because the water sewer.
Right, water rates, you would have been better off.
I'm telling you, I'm not doing it. And I'll sue. And, if we have to stop the project, I'll stop the project. But there's no way that you could take 30% of the population and exclude them for no reason.
Well, it's not 30%.
What is it?
Properties.
What is it?
I don't know what.
Right, I bet you, how many single family homes are on Snows Mountain Road?
I don't
It
know,
used to be 19.
And how many houses in total are out there?
over 100.
All right, so it's 20%.
Okay.
That's a big number. It's not like one or two houses. It's not like they're scattered all over the place in some towns or, it's a perfect spot to sewer. And if we're all talking about green, this is the best way to get rid of the sewer treatment and the nitrogen in the water. Because my septic system is going right to Mad River on a beeline. And it's not being treated. I don't see why we cannot get it. I don't see why it can't be voted in. I don't see why you cannot do this. You're excluding a fair amount of people. and probably the higher tax rate people. My taxes already on that property are way higher than 90% of the people down here. Why am I excluded?
I mean, this is something, I think at the town meeting, when we discuss this bond issue, we can talk further about.
Yeah, but if you're not proposing it, that's,
But town meeting can.
town meeting can do a lot of things, but you're the ones that need to propose things, either propose it two ways. I mean, you're talking about, you know, the
Well, number one.
concrete
we're
plant
not-
versus the, you know, waste treat.
We are not we do not have any design or any estimates of costs for a
Right.
sewer line but.
Why don't you get one?
Because you don't just, it'll take a year to get that.
I got a year.
Then come to the planning board meeting and tell them your concerns. And they can propose in the CIP to put in design money to do that. There's a process to follow.
Right, I can't go to every single meeting, you understand that?
No,
I try to go to a few.
So let me,
And you've known what I've talked about. A year ago, I talked about that I wanted town sewer. I don't think I've changed my mind. I don't think anything's changed.
all right, great. I mean, I'm not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with you, but I'm gonna excuse myself from this conversation, someone lives on Stone Mountain Road. And would one of the other select board members just close this out, this conversation?
Well, I just think at the point in time where we're ready to repave that road, that is a point in time where we can logically ask for an engineering estimate as to what it would mean, not only to fix the water, but also to fix the sewer and that. And that's the point in time where we can bring it to town meeting and have people vote on it.
And I
don't
think that
we're
was
We're not quite
right there,
there yet.
but we were talking about it. Thank you for saying that.
But right, that's kind of where we're going.
I can live with that philosophy because that makes sense, right? I think that's smart and prudent. But it seems like you're just constantly saying we cannot do Snows Mountain Road, can't do it, 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 blah, blah, blah. I just don't agree with that part of it.
I think we're only suspecting that it's going to be very.
Again, I drive down 93 and I look at ledge all day long and boom, they did it.
I think
Rob, do you
Margaret,
have anything? to
I think
add?
You
Margaret
can certainly
said-
do it, but it's gonna be
It's gonna be other cost.
Of course, everything costs money.
and we can find out what the cost is.
And the town may or may not be willing to pay that cost.
You understand that, but you're totally cutting out a fair amount of assessed value. And I'm not gonna sit here and live with my tax rate because my assessment went down $10,000. It's totally bogus. The house is less, at least $100,000 less because of the town sewer.
Okay, well, very much appreciate your opinion, and this is a topic I think we'll be discussing further. I have no doubt about that. I think, if there's no other, I have no other agenda item. I think all we have is a non-public session. Unless, anyone from the board has anything else they'd like to talk about. Thank you, everybody,
Thank you.
for coming, and about all, those of you who have stuck it out with us, or at least 2 of our 3 hours here today. Could I have a motion to go into non-public? I'll second that, all in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Smart. I'll be here.